everybody, and welcome to the final episode of our complete set review of Dominaria. I am Evan Irwin.
I'm Ruben Bressler.
And I'm Aaron Campbell.
And we are the Magic Mikes, and we are bringing you a complete set review of Dominaria thanks to our fans on Kickstarter and beyond. And this begins the final segment of such. So let's get started. Easter Glider?
Yeah, I think so. Easter
Glider.
Sure.
I am too southern for this card. It is a 3 generic mana, 2/1 common artifact creature bird construct that has flying but can't block. This is, as I recall, from like antiquities.
Alliances, I think.
Alliances, you're right.
Yeah,
Alliances.
this is an old card.
Yeah, this is an old school card. And as a result, not too good.
Not too good, but it is an artifact, so it triggers your heroic stuff. It is a 2-power
Historic
flyer.
stuff.
Yeah, your historic stuff.
You said heroic stuff.
Didn't I say
You
historic?
did say heroic.
It's okay.
Esther Glider?
I know,
Easter?
right?
Esther?
Easter.
Whatever. In
Either
any
way,
case,
it does trigger historic stuff.
it's been a long day. But it's a 2-power, 3-mana flyer,
Right.
so you can play it in those aggressive Skies-style decks. But yeah, you've definitely seen better. And
Is it me or does it kind of look like a Cubone from
Yeah, a little
Pokemon? Like you just see like the big helm and the wings.
skull,
And,
yeah.
Yeah, it's coming through. I mean, again, this is one of those probably better for draft and sealed. In sealed, you don't really want to be playing this unless you have like an insanely aggressive curve, because blocking is important.
Yep.
And top decking this versus like, you know, a 2 toughness whatever, and you're at 2.
Feels bad.
It feels super bad. Amaranthine Wall is a 4 generic mana, 0/6 uncommon wall artifact creature. It has Defender, and it has 2 generic mana, it gains indestructible until end of turn. So that's really neat. It's for 4 mana though.
It is. That's real expensive.
That's an expensive wall, but it
4
can
mana for an
never
0/6.
die if you just pay 2 mana.
Put even more mana into it. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask the question of who wants this?
Right.
Control decks, if you are a slower control deck, if you're trying to do something sort of more clever or with counter spells or with a lot of removal spells, this is the type of card that gets you to the late game and helps you stay there in the late game. Am I wrong?
I guess I'm just concerned. I'm concerned when
fine.
people play Control Unlimited to begin with, and so I'm just not sure this card's where you want to be.
Yeah, it's real expensive, and you know we've seen enough menace in this set already that I'm not too attached to.
Yeah.
Now there isn't a ton of death touch, and so having an 0/6 is quite good. A lot of the 6-power creatures are like 5/5s and 5/4s, but I'm not. I'm real upset if this is one of my uncommons. I'm just never picking it.
It's funny to me, like just flavor wise, that you can just walk around it.
Yeah.
You're just like, excuse me.
Yeah, it's just a block.
Yeah, appreciate that. Bye.
Well, it can only block 1 creature, so that's kind of on brand.
I suppose.
We don't know that it can't follow you. I mean, it
true.
could be one of those mystical in some way, or
If you open a very slow sealed pool and you have a lot of high expensive bombs, this can help get you to those big expensive bombs.
Sure.
It's bad in draft for pretty much the exact opposite reason, where it's just too fast of a format and it's not going to do enough. No way.
I'm not sure I'd pay 3 mana for this card. Like,
I mean, if I'm full of Verdant Forces and other 8 mana stupid things, like
Yeah,
I could at
guess
least see an
so.
argument to run it, because there's not a lot of good arguments to run
Sure.
it. That's the only one I can think of. Black Blade Reforged.
there we go.
8.
There's something.
2 mana. Legendary artifact equipment. It is rare. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each land you control. Equip legendary creature for 3 generic mana, or equip for 7 generic mana. So, quick timeout for the flavor.
There we go.
Had to kill a lot of people for this thing. Not only because when you, I think is it quelch or quench? Quench. You have to, when you make a sword, you put it in the fire and you bang, you gotta quench it in what is usually water. Except for the Black Blade, you had to put blood on it, and he
Quenched it with blood.
He put a few drops of like his own blood, and drops ain't gonna do it.
Right.
And so then he called his son over and killed him with it, because you know, as
Quenched
you
it
do.
with his living, breathing son. Yeah.
Yes, and then he did that to like 300 more people, and then you have a blade that is cursed. And flavor-wise aside, which is cool, it also harkens back to Dakon Black Blade from Legends, which also whose power and toughness was equal to the lands you control. So it all kind of works together. This thing, if you're just paying 5 mana for it, if you're attaching it to a legendary creature, is just bananas.
It's great, yeah.
It's bananas.
7 is a very difficult number to get to, but equipping to a legendary creature for 3 is very easy.
Yes.
Also harkens back to Coilas, the heir to Black Blade from Future Sight.
Yeah.
Which I don't know where in the timeline Coilas lines up, but also had power toughness based on swamps.
Right.
Yeah, Black Blade Reforged is a very easy first pick, I think. and you obviously draft specifically around it, but you're always going to be giving a creature +5/+5 or 6, just a crazy number that is immediately going to make every creature in your deck the best creature on the battlefield.
This card is super powerful. 7's a little tough, but like it's an easy windmill first pick. It is 100% you play it in your sealed deck no matter what. And your draft deck, you can make it work.
In the white set review, we discussed that Gideon lost his Sorcerer while he was on Amonkhet, and the flavor text here clues us in that maybe he's gonna get the Black Blade, which is a little bad. I'm not super excited because it's an evil sword.
But it might make Gideon interesting, so I'm all for it.
There you go. You might get a white-black Gideon to fill in that Sorin spot.
Oh, look, Gideon's being noble and punching people. That's a Gideon.
But we've also seen this from Gideon's character in the past, as sort of, with the, was it tragic arrogance?
Yeah.
Or was it where, I'm doing this thing that I think is going to save a lot of people, but in reality it's actually going to do a lot of harm. And so I'm not surprised to sort of see Gideon's narrow focus coming into play again.
Well, the past does repeat itself, as it turns out. Blood Tallow Candle is a 1 generic mana common artifact that has 6 generic mana. Tap, sacrifice it. Target creature gets -5/-5 until end of turn. This card is an okay piece of removal.
It's fine.
Yeah.
It's great at triggering historic.
Yeah, being a 1 mana historic trigger is the big deal.
Call back to Profane Memento?
Yep.
Yeah, which is terrific. And just be warned, it triggers historic.
It's going to be a lot of the theme of the artifact section. This one in particular is quite, I didn't say it for the 4 mana 06 wall. This one, it's actually relevant. It's a 1 mana artifact. You're able to stack those triggers, which I really like.
Right. And, again, given -5/-5 is going to destroy/kill most of what you're afraid of, or bring it down to a level where you're able to trade and kill it.
Colorless removal also for those white-green decks or those blue-green decks where actually getting something off of the battlefield permanently can be a bit
More
of a hassle.
specifically, permanent removal. This is something if you're playing the Archaeologist, you can get the artifact back.
Right.
If you're on the Muldrotha train like I am, this is something you can also kind of recur, and so that also sets it apart too. If you don't want to deal, if the things you have, if you have ways to recur things that aren't instants or sorceries, this will help you do that.
And remember that elephant.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's right. 6 mana kill something, 7 mana get it back. I'm okay with that.
Sure.
Not a card that you're going to be first picking. Not a card that you're honestly going to be picking that early.
Nah.
In draft, this is
Probably
way worse.
not something you want 2 of.
Yeah,
even.
this is not something like if you're dying for historic triggers.
Universal Solvent was in, I believe, Aether Revolt, which was a 1 mana artifact that had 7 tap, destroy a permanent, and it was fine. It was serviceable, but it is not great.
I think this is very similar.
Very similar.
Like it's 1 mana cheaper, and that's great. It only hits creatures for -5/-5.
But in draft with Universal Solvent, you were almost always hitting a creature anyway, and this is going to kill most of the creatures. They're almost identical. But yeah, it's not a card you want multiples of.
It's better in sealed than draft.
Sure.
And I'm okay with that. It'll never hit a constructed format in a million years. Damping Sphere.
Meanwhile,
oh my god.
this will hit a constructed format.
Oh, yes, it will. 2 generic mana for an uncommon artifact. I could have sworn this was a rare when they first spoiled it. And many people pre-sold it as a rare.
Yeah.
And many people bought it for like $10 thinking it was a rare in pre-sales on eBay. That said, Damping Sphere is a 2 generic mana uncommon artifact that says if a land is tapped for 2 or more mana, it instead produces Wingy Ding, also known as Coilas, instead of any other type and amount. Each spell a player casts costs 1 generic mana more to cast for each other spell that player has cast this turn. Wow.
Yeah, this may not necessarily have the biggest implications in Standard or even Sealed or Draft, but this has huge implications for Modern, Legacy, and Vintage, where the Tron decks are a thing, Storm decks are a thing. I mentioned earlier in the show that when you hear casting cost 3 or less, that tends to be a dog whistle for older formats, because it's not uncommon to just cast spells, very cheap spells, very quickly, and this really kind of puts a damper on that, no pun intended.
Wow.
But this card is going to see a lot of play. I love the shout out to Null Rod in the flavor text, and this card is fantastic.
Well, it spent 10,000 years doing absolutely nothing.
Right.
Which is absolutely amazing. Now, to be clear, this is basically unplayable in sealed and draft. I'm sorry if you got it as your...
Unless you get the weird Cabal Stronghold deck where you're just really afraid of all the black mana.
Pick the foils, though. Those are going to be real expensive for the vintage folks out there.
Yeah, it's weird. And again, for me, I also thought it was rare because it's basically unplayable in sealed and draft. So keep it at rare. Let you have that one feel bad because it's like your foil stand stamped rare and you go, oh snap, I guess I'll trade it to my vintage buddy. But like this
it
effect is
definitely
weird.
feels like a lot of the cards in Dominaria are different rare. Now, it may have been a result of the leak, and we sort of built it into our heads of this feels like it's this rarity.
Right.
But, we're getting effects at different rarities that we rarely get at those rarities. I mean, we got, for example, this effect is almost always on a rare. The History of Benalia effect is almost always on an uncommon. We're seeing a sort of weird mix-up of different effects at different rarities.
And I'm just trying to, I'm just like, how in the world would I ever justify playing this? If I play against the most aggressive of aggressive decks, this is on my turn too, and they're already playing stuff.
It's
not good.
Neither line of text is relevant in limited.
But older formats, this thing, all-star. Forbearers Blade, which is a 3 generic mana rare artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +3/+0 and has vigilance and trample. Whenever the equipped creature dies, attach Forbearers Blade to target creature you control and it has equip of 3. So it's like a Loxodon Warhammer, but you get vigilance and trample instead of trample and lifelink. But you also get the ability to kind of hand it off. You're like, oh, I'm dead now. You take this. Which is awesome.
Which the art harkens to. There's a dead guy in the foreground and someone else picking up the sword in their place. This card is also bananas. This equipment of, it doesn't have the lifelink of the Loxodon Warhammer, but vigilance. The lifelink was almost not relevant as in limited. Now, in constructed, the lifelink was massively relevant, but even in limited, it was quite good. Vigilance might be more relevant than lifelink. Maybe. Especially with the second line of text of being able to attack, block, maybe chump, maybe trade, but immediately reattach it to something else.
Yeah, this card seems incredibly annoying.
Yeah.
Like not overpowering, but just like, God, I have to deal with this stupid card. This is the type where you're like, where is that sorcery naturalize? Because I just can't deal with this stupid card. That's what makes you bring in those types of cards, because the power of this card is absolutely real. Yes, it takes 6 mana to get going, but once it's going, my God, that train don't stop. This thing is sweet. Gilded Lotus.
Our preview card.
Hey, it's our preview card.
It's beautiful.
I have actually seen many very talented, powerful mages, if you will, note that this might be one of the best cards in the set.
Yeah,
what?
I believe it.
Because, in standard? What? Because nothing gives you the power that this does. Nothing takes you from 5 mana to essentially 9 mana immediately. And Gilded Lotus does it. And untapping with a Gilded Lotus is often game over for a variety of decks. And that's fantastic. Gilded Lotus, for those who don't know, is a 5 generic mana rare artifact that taps to add 3 mana of any one color. It is obviously harkening back to Black Lotus. This is amazing in sealed.
Yeah.
Not so much in draft, because usually decks are faster and they're more tuned and blah, blah, but this card is bananas in sealed. Like, just fantastic.
A couple of our preview cards have been sleepers. We had Seasons Past that we didn't really hear anything about, and suddenly Reed Duke's doing a deck tech of the Pro Tour. Angel of Invention kind of took a while, and now it's an important piece of the God Pharaoh's Gifts deck. And yeah, it's funny that you're telling me this. I was like, really? This is standard? Okay.
I mean, of course, it's a Commander All-Star. The card's like $12 or whatever.
Just needed reprint.
Right, just straight up.
And the story about this card that I thought was fascinating that I learned was that they knew when they were designing Dominaria they were going to put a Lotus card and a Mox card in the set in one way, shape, or form, but they didn't know which ones, whether they were going to make a new card or whether they were going to reprint something. And so they commissioned art for both. And they got the Mox Amber, which is the new one, and the Gilded Lotus, which turned out to be the reprint, but they had already gotten the new art from Vulcan Baga, which obviously is gorgeous, but that is the genesis of how Gilded Lotus got new art for this set.
Nice. Well, again, this card is fantastic. It's not like it's totally unplayable in draft, but you really have to build a ramp deck around it. Sure. Whereas sealed, it just fixes your mana perfectly and is great and lets you splash really ridiculous things and cast those 7/8s that 7 mana, 8 mana cards that we kept saying you just can't play in draft and sealed. Well, you can play them if you have something like
those
this.
Those Verdant Forces, those Slyn Vodas, all those kind of stuff.
Guardians of Coilas is a 5 generic mana 4/4 common artifact construct creature. When Guardians of Coilas enters the battlefield, you may return another target historic permanent you control to its owner's hand. So this is a way for you to kind of rebuy your sagas. You can rebuy your Enter the Battlefield effects from artifacts, or of course you can pick up a legend and get its Enter the Battlefield effects as well.
Not bad. I mean, it's
fine.
a Dirkwood boar. It's a 5-mana 4/4.
Right.
At the very and it is a May trigger, so you don't necessarily have to reset one of your artifacts.
Yeah,
Just interesting.
If it weren't a May trigger, you'd have to return itself.
Yeah.
Shout out to Caves of Coilas, which is a famous Painland or a Painland, yeah.
Oh yeah.
From previous core sets, and you know.
And the Cave of Coilas and Coilas itself is a very famous location. It was the site of one of the major victories, I believe, during the Invasion War. And so, it even for being a Painland, it's actually more famous of a location than the Battlefield Forge or the Llanowar Wastes or whatever and what have you. So
I mean, Caves of Coilas was where the gate to Phyrexia was.
Right.
Like that's where you got to Phyrexia was through the Caves of Coilas, which they didn't even print until was it Apocalypse or something?
Apocalypse.
Which was crazy. To note when you go back to read the story and how much they wouldn't shut up about Coilas and the caves of it.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, you finally got around to giving us a card like 5 years
it wasn't
later.
anything in particular. It was just a Painland, which is kind of weird.
Well, it's a white-black Painland. Okay, sure, whatever. But ultimately, Guardians of Coilas, again, it's a 5-mana 4/4. It's nothing to write home about. If you have a lot of great enter the battlefield abilities, you should play it. But if it's fighting for like a 5-drop spot, I wouldn't rate it too highly, personally. Helm of the Host is next.
Art is beautiful.
Which is amazing. It's a 4 generic mana, rare, legendary artifact equipment. At the beginning of combat on your turn, create a token that's a copy of equipped creature, except the token isn't legendary if equipped creature is legendary, and that token gains haste. So you got to sink in 9 mana.
Right.
And obviously this is going to be turn 4, turn 5, not necessarily play and equip. But you get copies of your best thing forever until... Did I mention the whole sorcery naturalized? Like, I can't... Stupid card. I can't beat this stupid card.
Well, most of the equipment I've seen so far you need to deal with immediately, and if you don't, it just kind of runs away with the cam.
The Helm of the Host is just, well, first of all, built for Commander. I mean, this card is bananas. I can't wait to suit up my Itali for my Primal Storm Brawl deck with this card.
Oh, man.
Get all the triggers. The fact that they don't leave at the end of the turn, I mean, Geist of St. Traft has conditioned us to think that if something comes in attacking, then it gets,
I mean, even the Valduke, even his tokens sort of get exiled at end of turn, and it's very rare that they don't.
Yeah,
it's very noteworthy.
absolutely.
I mean, it removes the legendary from legendary people and keeps giving you tokens that never go away.
Yeah.
It also has amazing flavor, forged out of Flowstone for the Queen of Vesuva. Vesuva being the land that copies other lands.
Yep.
Flowstone being part of the Plane of Wrath, and then be able to shape the land into whatever they wanted to shape it into, someone similar to the host. Like this card's just a flavor win. It's a super bomb in limited. Even if draft's a little slow, I mean, this thing is almost unstoppable once it gets going.
Yep.
Like it's really scary. Howling Golem is next. It's a 3 generic mana, 2/3 uncommon artifact creature golem. Whenever it attacks or blocks, each player draws a card.
Look at that.
Harkens back to the Howling Mine. This one, Howling Golem. The face kind of looks like the latest arts of the Howling Mine as well. Again, with the Blind Phantasm stats, 2/3 for 3. Very happy to have this in any of my decks, I think.
I just think it's a super cool way because you control it.
Yeah.
Howling Mine was like, well, it's going, and it's going to go until somebody taps it or it's destroyed. And then they're going to untap it and keep going. But Howling Golem's like, do I want us to draw a card? All right, cool, I'll block.
Yeah.
And it's also neat that your opponent will also have many of those same decisions if they have it. You attack him with a 2/1, because you need to draw something.
Yeah.
You going to block it? You want to go ahead and kill us? We can draw a card? So like that's a weird sort of situation to put your opponent in or even yourself in, which I think is neat. That said, I'm not sure how good this card is.
Yeah, it's not great, that's for sure.
It doesn't seem that good because you're both getting the benefit, which is nice, but you're both getting the benefit.
Yeah.
So, that was always the problem with Howling Mine anyway.
Right, except when you could abuse it with other things.
Or when you were so confident that what you were drawing was much better than what they were drawing.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So next up is Icy Manipulator from Alpha.
Wow.
4 generic mana, a uncommon artifact, 1 generic mana, tap target artifact, creature, or land.
Man.
The ice may thaw, but malice never does.
I mean, cards like this have seen standard play. Debtor's
for sure.
Pulpit was in sideboards. I mean, yeah, it's not uncommon.
Icy Manipulators. Icy Manipulators won a Pro Tour before.
Yeah.
I mean, we won the first Pro Tour. Icy Manipulator, I think, might honestly be something that people want to use in like standard. It depends on how the metagame evolves. But
I don't think so. But
probably not. But you know, it's an effect we don't get very often, and I'm happy to have it back.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's your last resort to answer a problem, it still answers the problem.
Right.
And it's amazing in sealed. Always play it in sealed, no question.
I'm happy to first pick this every single time I open it too.
If draft is super fast, this isn't going to be as good. But
sure.
The point is, like, there's a reason they keep putting this stuff in cubes,
Yeah.
for example. Like, this card kind of answers a lot of problems. And also note that it can tap lands. That's something you don't really get anymore. This is the old school feel where, like, oh, during your upkeep, I'll tap your only source of whatever color. Don't forget that part of it, because it's not just answering creatures, it also answers all their artifacts and their lands.
Very important in sealed formats where the fixing isn't always great, or you may not have opened any. And so if you find that one land for the second or third color you're playing and they keep you off of it, that can really change the game.
Yeah, so Icy Manipulator is super cool reprint, though.
Yeah.
We're going back to Dominaria. There it is. Jorah's Familiar. Oh, the cute alert.
Yeah, the adorableness factor of this set is through the roof.
The ball. It's a 4 generic mana, 2/2 uncommon artifact creature bird. It has flying, and historic spells you cast cost 1 generic less to cast. Also known as, this is going to be in every Brawl deck ever.
Yes.
I
was just going to say that this is probably going to be in literally every Brawl deck, so pick up foils.
Yes, get your foils early.
And it's also going to be very popular in the other Commander decks that have generals, but specifically Brawl, this is going to be the best one.
Yeah, it's a super cute card. It's a neat card. It doesn't do a whole bunch unless you have a whole bunch of historic spells to kind of go with it. This is one of those kind of draft build-arounds almost. Where it's gonna pay off if you have a bunch of historic cards. Without a bunch of historic cards, it's just kind of like a 4-mana 2/2 flyer, which is awkward.
Yeah.
So it's not that awesome.
Yeah.
Jousting Lance is awesome. It is a 2 generic mana, common artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+0, and as long as it's your turn, equipped creature has first strike, and it has equip of 3 generic mana.
Yep.
So this card's flavor is amazing. You're jousting on your turn, you get to hit them first, which is great. It still gives the bonus regardless of whether it's your turn or not.
Yep.
It's 2 mana to play and 3 mana to equip. So if you have a 1-drop, one of the great 1-drops they have in the set, you're able to get it attached to one of those creatures. And late game, it's still good.
Yeah.
And that first strike matters a lot, particularly if you have something with evasion.
Yeah, the equipment in this set seem to be much better than they usually are in terms of being more important. So even something like Jousting Lance, something simple like that, there's so many ways to take advantage of the +2/+0 on offense and on defense in this set, even more so than others. Oh, by the way, again, you can trigger all of your early historic stuff with a Jousting Lance and have a mana sink later in the game.
Yeah, pairs well with several of the cards. If you're running Quende, this becomes double strike.
Right.
If you're playing Tetsuo, even though the power might get big, if the toughness is still low, it's still unblockable. There's neat things you can do with this card.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I mean, this isn't the greatest card of all time.
No, it's serviceable.
It's a common.
I'm happy to have this in my deck.
Yeah, it does what it needs to do. I'm not going to first pick Windmill Slam this thing, but I'm certainly not going to, I think as Aaron says, throw it out of bed for eating crackers. Is that you? Is that one?
I wouldn't kick it out of my bed for eating Cheetos.
There you go. See, way more specific. I'm over here with saltines. She's got Cheetos. It's fine. But Jousting Lance is a good card.
Yeah.
Is something that you should play and be able to have in your deck, particularly if it's able to use or work with any of your other existing cards.
Valduk, we've seen a couple cards that want to have equipment, and
Yeah, and that 1/2 mana 1/1 guy. Whoo, crazy. Juggernaut, baby.
Yes.
Woo, it's Juggernaut back from Alpha, 4 generic mana for a 5/3.
Got some upgrades.
It has. It looks spiffy these days.
Yeah.
4 generic mana for a 5/3 uncommon artifact creature Juggernaut. It attacks each combat if able and cannot be blocked by walls. Deal with it.
Yeah.
Amaranthine, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you got 6 toughness.
Deep frozen creature. Or
Deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah, Juggernaut it's got vintage pedigree. People used to play it in vintage back when Mindslaver was popular because way back. It's not been recent. But when Mindslaver was popular back in the old days of vintage, people liked playing Juggernaut because it has to attack. Another fun thing I like about Juggernaut is that there is a subset of the Magic community that plays poker. And the poker players some of the poker players that I'm friends with, we have this inside joke that whenever you have a suited 5-3, the same suit, you raise every street just to bluff because it must attack each turn of Fable.
Nice. Sounds like a good way to lose money.
It's a really good way to lose money, but you feel real good when it works.
But that flavor, though.
The flavor.
That flavor.
Yeah, it's hashtag on brand to lose all of your money attacking every turn of Fable.
It's really it's difficult. Well, first of all, it's weird that Juggernaut's been around for 25 years, yet it's still strange to evaluate.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes it's great.
Yeah.
Other times it's poop. It depends on the speed of the format. I would generally play this in sealed because it's still a 4-mana 5/3. But because creatures are better these days, it does trade more often.
Right.
And as a result, I think it just gets a little bit worse and much lower in the pick order than it was many, many years ago.
I agree with that.
But I think if you don't have any removal as we know it, being like instant sorceries or enchantments, sometimes you just have to take kind of the green approach of just your removal is creatures, where like you're happy to just have it trade and be like, fine, I can't kill your things the old-fashioned way, but I'll just run this big dumb thing into it, make you block, and that'll be my way of dealing with your stuff. I mean, it's not pretty, but that's what you're forced to do.
Yeah, it's a Juggernaut. It's rumbling towards you. Mishra's Self-Replicator is next. It's a 5 generic mana rare artifact creature assembly worker. It is a 2/2, and whenever you cast a historic spell, you may pay 1 generic mana. And if you do, create a token that's a copy of Mishra's Self-Replicator. So it's funny, they were like, hey, Wizards, you didn't make a token for this.
Yeah.
And they said, yeah, because it's the same card.
Yeah.
It's you don't get a token.
You did that with Pack Rat, too. There was no official Pack Rat token. It was just you get a Pack Rat.
Yeah.
You just get another Pack Rat. And so you just need to buy more Mishra's Self-Replicators if you want to use Mishra's Self-Replicator.
And then, like, cut out the text box.
Well, it opens the door, I think, for artists, too. We have several talented artists in our community that might be willing to fill the void. Again, I know when Pack Rat came out, Proxy Guy had rat tokens. Any of the people on Cardamajigs, those artists did. And so, I mean, it leaves the door open for people to use their imaginations.
You're creating a direct token of it.
Yeah.
You can then play a historic spell and pay 2 mana and then go make 2 more.
Yeah, and then it accelerates from that point.
Right.
This is a weirdo. I mean, it's 5 mana for a 2/2. I'm not super excited about that. It is creature type assembly worker, which is Mishra's calling card, which I kind of like.
We did have an assembly worker in Kaladesh, I believe. Self-assembler?
The self-assembler.
Yeah.
That card is a player in Pauper now, if I'm not mistaken.
I ran those in pre-release and loved them.
Yeah, this card, on the other hand, is the opportunity cost is a lot higher to try to get this thing to work.
Right. It's much worse in draft than sealed because you have a slower format where you can play the historic spells and actually maybe get some copies. But you're still just kind of getting a 2/2 out of it.
You're still just getting a 5 mana 2/2. Like, I'm still not excited.
Like you have to copy it once and then have those 2 copy again for I feel you start to go like, wow, this is really affecting the board.
Yeah.
But you also had to have 2 historic spells to do all that. You mean like when it's like bop, da bop, da bop, da bop, it's probably just for casual.
Yeah.
You know, once you check too many boxes, it becomes too difficult to do well.
Yeah.
Next up, we have a special guest for Mach Amber. Oh boy, I wonder who it could be. Let's see.
Hey Magic Mikes, Randy Buehler here from the Super Leagues. Card in Dominaria I want to talk about is Mach Amber. Maybe not for the reasons you're thinking about though. I looked at Mach Amber and my brain went to exactly one place. Norn the Wary. This guy has been my commander. It's my commander deck. I look at this guy, he's afraid of everything, right? I mean, the deck is all kinds of random things to actually try to make Norn the Wary does something, right? You can swap creatures with your opponents. You can have him come into play and trigger Genesis Chamber over and over, Porphyros over and over again. What I didn't have in the deck, though, was Mox Ruby. Mox Amber doesn't scare Norn. He doesn't care if you tap your artifact for mana. He says, you know what? I'm a legendary creature. I am in play. This is about the most you can get out of Norn the Wary, and you better believe I'm going to be doing exactly that in my commander deck. I actually think these 2 cards are kind of made for each other, not just in the sense that, okay, it's a 0-mana Mox that really wants you to have a 1-mana legendary creature, but I think they're both balanced to the point where they're not broken, right? Norn the Wary came in an era where all of the 1-mana 2/1s were ridiculous, right? Jackal Pup was one of the dominant creatures in Standard, and, fine, the creature curve has moved a little while, but, Norn the Wary was, we're finally going to make a 1-mana 2/1 that's not broken. Hey, mission accomplished. I think Mach Amber, I don't know that it's as hard to use as Norn the Wary, but I do think that I think it's balanced. Like, I don't think it's gonna break in half anywhere. I want it to break in Vintage, but I haven't been able to figure out how you can actually reliably get those legends in play right away. So I don't know. Maybe I think it's gonna work out to be playable. I think it's gonna work out to be a cool card. It's kind of a fun deck building challenge. But for me, I get a Mox Ruby for my commander deck.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Randy, for participating in the show.
Yeah.
Mach Sabre is a really neat card.
It is.
Very polarizing. Either people are really, really high on it, or people couldn't care less. There's no real middle ground here.
I'm interested to see if it can actually do anything in, well, Vintage, you already have so many Moxes, such as Mox Ruby.
But it's also not hard to get, I mean, a turn 1 Jace or a turn 1 Dak Vaden is not impossible.
Not that impossible, but typically you have to get there with your Moxen. Once you have the Jace or Dak Vaden in play, it's a little bit easier. Certainly the 1 mana legends are going to be much more attractive. Things like Ovia Lifecrafter, I think, is the one that is going to help with Mox Amber the most in Standard, at least. And so, you know, you have to go through your list of, well, does Isamaru really, is that a thing we want to be doing? I'm not sure we want to be playing like Thalias. I mean, that's probably the home, right? Is like legendary 2-mana white creatures for your Mox Ambers? I'm not sure. I guess, yeah, I don't know.
For those who don't know, Mox Amber is a 0-cost legendary mythic artifact. And it taps to add 1 mana of any color among legendary creatures and planeswalkers you control. And it's a Mox, which means it's a 0-cost artifact that makes mana, and they have given it about as restrictive a restriction as they could restrict.
Yep.
You know, you gotta already have something in play, so it can't really power out things that are not already in play. Yep. It's restricted to whatever is in play based on its mana cost. But we can all agree that Stephen Belladin is an absolute master.
It's beautiful.
Oh my God. If you see the high res of this card, the leather, just the leather. I mean, the cracks in the leather, the incredible intricate of the intricacy of the chain is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just incredible. Like, if nothing else, the artwork for this is unbelievable.
Yeah.
It is great. Otherwise, if you open it in your sealed pools,
probably not.
you should probably sell it, to be honest.
Yeah, leave it in your sideboards.
Go get your
Unless
X%.
you're really hard up for historic, like cheap historic stuff, like I would avoid this, because it's just another. You have to put it in over a spell slot because you can't reliably use it for mana, and then that's a spell slot of basically a Darksteel relic. It doesn't do anything most of the time.
Right.
And so that's going to be a bit of a problem. But it is nice that you get to immediately, like if you have the 4-mana 2/2 that when you cast a historic spell you get to unearth something.
Sure.
You get to do that on turn 4 as opposed to waiting to have to untap, which is kind of nice.
Which is neat.
But it's few and far between.
Your corner cases of your corner cases.
Yeah.
I mean, even in draft, I mean, this to me is
not
just
even fixing your mana.
No, it's just a money draft. This is one of those cards that I think casual players are going to love to death for good reason. It's really very much built for the Brawl Commander crowd. Yep. And if it gets there and constructed, I'll be super surprised.
It is great for Norin the Wary, though. It is really good for that.
It is actually terrific for Norin the Wary, which is cool. But the card itself is great. I mean, it is a chase rare. Like, they're going for $30, $35 right now. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, the card is expensive right now in terms of pre-order. And again, maybe you'll see this in the future, and it will be silly how expensive it is, and we'll see. Navigators Compass.
I love this.
This card is cool. It is a 1 generic mana common artifact that when it enters the battlefield, you gain 3 life, and tap until end of turn. Target land you control becomes the basic land type of your choice in addition to its other types. Sometimes this really matters, such as with Tempest Gen. Sometimes you're just trying to fix your mana because you have a multicolor deck. Right. It is only a common. I like that it has Weatherlight. This is includes Weatherlight in terms of...
Also has Plane Shift.
Oh, as well as Plane Shift, because high five.
There you go.
That's pretty cool. And it also has that kind of cute like developer note to me, which is like it needs to gain life because otherwise it does nothing. Like if you don't really need it, you just kind of played it and said go. At least you can be like, play it, gain 3 life, say go. I'm never going to need this ever for the rest of the game, but at least I got a historic trigger off of it.
I think that's a neat take on mana fixing. I feel like, we tend to see the same things. We see Prophetic Prism, we see, the Darksteel Ingots. Yeah, we see the Traveler's Amulets, or we see that, the Burnished, that deer that sacrifices.
Heart,
so I feel like, a lot of those tend to get very played out. So I think this is a really fresh take on it.
I agree.
We saw this, I think, in, the first time I saw this at least was in Gatecrash. I think there was a Simic that like changed lands somehow as like a rare. And so I think this is a really neat take. I think gaining the life is not nothing. Like I don't think that's irrelevant. But it's cool. I'd love to see more of this in this sort of design space.
Sure.
Yeah, ultimately it's not a exciting card. If you're in sealed and you're splashing some colors, great. If you're playing draft, it's probably better because you're literally gunning for a multicolor type strategy. And there are very powerful multicolor cards that we'll get to.
It's a shame there's no land walk in this set. Just whoop, there's your mountain walk.
Right.
No land walk.
It's only you control as well. This is not a Tide Shaper Mystic where we can like upkeep, turn your island into a plane so you can't cast your Brainstorm or anything. That was always fun.
Hardic Wanderer, which is a terrific card, which we'll get to about in just a second, is a 6 generic mana 5/5 Trampler, a common artifact creature golem. And it's a 6 mana 5/5 Trampler. Okay, sure, whatever. The real star here is that it mentions 93, beta, and revised all in the same flavor text.
As a big site.
That's just fantastic.
Yep. A little bit of wink nod thing happening here. Of like, we know this is ridiculous, but we needed to figure it out.
Super wink, much nod. Wow. And is his arm a boot? What's going on there? Is that a...
He's got a hammer hand.
It's like a hammer.
He's coming to get you.
I mean, if he's part of the build site or he's part of the dig site, it's possible that's a building.
Walked off.
Yeah, that's a building, maybe.
He's just like, I'll see you guys later, and he's like, ka-chunk, attach and let's go.
I think it's worth putting in your sealed deck.
Yeah, in your sealed deck, it's slow enough, but it's powerful enough to make it worth it. Not so much in the draft decks. Again,
this is a keyword that's relevant. We'd seen a couple of 6/6 for 5s. Or 5/5s for 6 that were not relevant keywords.
Right.
Trample, definitely relevant.
Good in any color.
Yeah, good in any color. Great with all the pump spells. This card is fine.
Yeah.
You know, it's a solid 6 out of 10. You know, it's like it's got that extra bump because of the trample, and it's good. Power Stone Shard, another amazing callback to the old school Magic. It is a 3 generic mana artifact. It is a common that taps for a colorless mana for each artifact you control named Power Stone Shard. Now, this is a card I've already seen people who are looking at ramp decks in terms of taking. This isn't great in limited because it's just 3 mana for a 1 mana rock, so you're kind of overpaying for it by default. So I certainly wouldn't like, gear to get multiples in draft. Right.
I mean, you're probably gonna get multiples in draft because nobody wants them.
Gonna play them.
No, exactly. And having 2 in play gets you 4 mana out of it. That's a lot. I mean, if you're trying to play the Verdant Force Thorn Elemental strats, then maybe Power Stone Shards are worth investing in.
Maybe.
And you're gonna get them, you're gonna wheel them all. You're gonna get them 10th. Art's gorgeous. Harkens back to some fascinating thoughts about Teferi and Urza in the flavor text. I mean, it's a very cool card. I really wish this were the card that said you may play any number of these in your deck. Because I think then it'd be interesting.
That'd be really neat.
I think that I would love to see that happen for a non-rat card sometime in the future. Or at least be like, you can play 8 or 15. Or like pick a number and say you can play X number of these in your deck, or give it a keyword like Relentless Rats. We could call this Relentless 8. We can play 8 Power Stone Shards in our deck. I think that would be super interesting. As of right now, I mean, it's the only Power Stone Shard that exists. It's not like we're making a bunch of mana with our Cloud Post Locus mana, which is what this is trying to be and not really succeeding at.
Right. Well, and part of it is the story kind of win. The Power Stones being the Might Stone and the Meek Stone, being what Urza found and his brother in the cave before they unlocked the gate to Phyrexia, and later they became Urza's eyes when his Planeswalker Spark came off. Like there's a whole bunch of lore of Vorthosy goodness here that doesn't mean it's necessarily going to translate to gameplay.
Yeah. Right.
Shield of the Realm is a 2 generic mana uncommon artifact equipment. If a source would deal damage to equipped creature, prevent 2 of that damage, and equip for 1 generic mana.
Cheap equip cost, I think, is the big selling point for Shield of the Realm. Being able to, it's not just combat damage, it's all damage. So you're able to not just give additional toughness, quote unquote, you're able to prevent it from dying to shocks and things like that outside of combat. So kind of interesting on that stand front. But for the most part, I'm not interested in defensive equipment.
Yeah, if you're playing sealed, and you're blocking, you're probably doing something wrong.
Right.
Or the game didn't go well.
Well, it also, I mean, I would note that I think it also works on defense. I also think it's very unique in that it doesn't give +0/+2.
Yeah.
which is kind of like the default, defender equipment, whatever. No. It prevents 2 from every source that would deal damage to it. So if something's trying to block it, then it prevents 2 of that damage. And then they play a spell on it, it prevents 2 of that damage. Like, it prevents multiple sources of damage, which is a unique and interesting thing for a cheap historic spell, which I wouldn't, I'm not, going crazy over it, but I'm just saying, I don't think it's quite as, bad as I feel.
The other 2-mana equipments that we've seen and will see, I would much rather have, even though this is the uncommon, and you would think that the uncommons are going to be more valuable. I'm not a huge fan of this. We do get the stained glass motif again from Benalia, though, which I'm a huge fan of.
I'm also noticing a pattern where all of the equipment, or a majority of the equipment, seems to have fabric around it, whether it be drapes or blankets or something. I think that's really interesting.
Right. I think this is uncommon for a reason, though. Sure. I think it might just be better than we feel it is for whatever reason. Possible. Maybe there's some interactions we're missing. Shortsword, because there was never a card named Shortsword.
I love it.
They kept making cards that were based on the plane, Leon and Scimitar and stuff that you can't just randomly put in Dominaria.
We gave Gideon a Sorrel before we got a Shortsword.
Yep. I know, right? So we got Shortsword. 1 generic mana, common equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1. Equipped for 1 generic
Quick and
mana.
dirty.
I am going to play many copies of this in many different types of draft decks. Even without the historic benefit, I've played the set name artifact +1/+1 for 1 and 1 equipments in the past. They're always good value. They make your whatever creatures are in play just a little bit better, which is usually all you need. Your 2/2s now trade with your opponent's 3/3s. Your 3/3s now trade with your opponent's 4/4s. This is a good card.
Right, it's a fine card. It's one of those why.
I don't want multiples, but no. I will probably play the first one.
Yeah, I won't play the first one. It's fine.
Yeah.
I honestly think it's a little bit better in draft because you can work on that curve versus sealed, where you're like, well, I'm going to make this random dork kind of a little bit more dorky, as it were.
And this is the equipment you want for Valduke and for the 2-mana 1/1 red creature that gets +2/+2 because of how efficient costing 1 and equipping for 1 is.
Right. Plus all the historic triggers, this card is
the
is
1
solid.
mana. The 1 mana historic stuff, in addition to being able to immediately use it, means that you probably get your trigger and cast another spell.
Right, and your
which
benefits.
is a big deal.
Skittering Surveyor.
This card is nice.
This card is so sweet. It's a 3 generic mana, 1/2 common artifact creature construct. When Skittering Surveyor enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your library.
I like this.
Yeah, card's great. Pilgrim's Eye was a tournament playable card already. There was a 3 mana 1/1 flyer. This is just a 3 mana 1/2, which is fine.
Which is good.
The number of cards. I mean, this is also going to go in every Brawl deck, by the way. So pick up your foils. Also, the adorableness factor. Look at that little guy. He's great.
Oh, man. And Pilgrim's Eye, I've heard some on Twitch chat call this Pilgrim's Lazy Eye, which I thought was hilarious.
Because he can't fly, but he's got that extra toughness.
I love it.
Yeah. This card is great. It's terrific in sealed. It's good in draft because it fixes your mana. It takes you from 3 to 4. It guarantees you get your next land drop. It gets
puts
you
an
another
extra
color.
card in your hand, which it replaces itself. It replaces itself with a land, but it still replaces itself, and that is always going to be relevant.
Yeah, absolutely. So this card is super good. It's not going to be in constructed, I feel, but
I think it might.
It might.
I mean, Pilgrim's Eye at various points in its lifespan has been, so.
It did, but Pilgrim's Eye, I think, the important distinction there is that it can block evasive creatures.
Sure.
Whereas Skittering, Pilgrim's Lazy Eye is like, whoa.
Well, Pilgrim's Eye was also great because Delirium was a thing, and so you needed to just get an artifact in the graveyard. If historic becomes a thing, or where you want those triggers, then this could certainly see a home. But I think it depends on what's happening in the
around it. It's very context dependent for sure.
But this is your sealed all-star. It goes in every sealed deck. I don't care what you're building, how you're building
When
it.
you open your sealed pool, you're hoping to open multiples of this common.
Because it's going to fix all your mana for you and keep you running. Sorcerer's Wand, another terrific sort of 1 mana artifact equipment. It is an uncommon that equips for 3 generic mana. Equipped creature has tap. This creature deals 1 damage to target player or planeswalker. If this creature is a wizard, it deals 2 damage to that player or planeswalker instead. This card is very, very powerful.
It is.
This card is super good. It screws up combat.
Only players and planeswalkers. Does not screw up combat. Doesn't it? Right?
Oh, you're right. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, it can get around board stalls. If you're all kind of staring at each other, it's like, okay, I'll just get around that and whoop.
All right, so I just thought this was a straight pinger when it's actually a player or a planeswalker.
Not a
pinger.
Viridian Longbow, unfortunately.
I wish.
Fair enough.
I wish to.
Well, okay, so let's look in the other facet.
Yeah.
If it's just players and planeswalkers, clearly the only people who want this card are playing in the wizard deck.
Yes.
So if you have the wizard deck, this card's pretty cool.
It's pretty fun. Yeah, and you're also likely to wheel it because nobody else wants it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible that non-wizard super aggro decks want it, but those are going to be few and far between. I think that this card is good. Like, you attack early, and then to end the game, you equip this up, and then Cursed Scroll them out of the game with 3 tap activations or 4 tap activations.
Right. You definitely want this in the wizard sort of aggressive deck.
Yes.
Because it's bad everywhere else.
It's pretty bad.
It's not great. Definitely not great. Sparring Construct. This card is so neat. It is a 1 mana 1/1, 1 generic mana 1/1 for a common artifact creature construct. When it dies, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. And I mean, and the whole flavor text explaining the whole thing. The trainers were a gift of gratitude from the Wizards of Teleria West to the Knights of New Benalia for their aid during the Talus incursion. Like, it's so cool. It's a sparring guy.
Yeah.
And you bust him up and he makes you better.
It's super interesting. We've seen Arcbound Worker before, which was a 1 mana modular one that first of all had modular, so the +1/+1 counters were relevant, but also could only put them onto artifact creatures. When this dies, it's any creature you control, which is pretty sweet. So this is whichever combination of colors becomes the aggro deck, you're going to want these in your deck because you can go turn 1 this, turn 2, +2/+1 in Menace, or there are lots of auras and equipment that are going to make a Sparring Construct relevant, and having access to a colorless 1/1 at common that has a tangible benefit on the side is also going to be very good.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is one of those where it's better in draft than sealed.
Yep.
And sealed, I don't know if I really want to play this much at all, to be honest, because it's just not good in that way. And I don't see it in constructed. It's just like it fits that niche of awesome in draft.
Although I will say, my She-Ray EDH deck, because it only has 1 power, I'm more than happy to like just sack it to things and then get counters and do dumb things. So.
That's awesome. Yeah, this card's fun. Thran Temporal Gateway, a 4 generic mana rare legendary artifact. 4 generic mana tap : you may put a historic permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield.
It's a Quicksilver Amulet.
Yeah, this card's and Quicksilver Amulet is a wanted card for the singleton formats.
Yeah.
Thran Temporal Gateway has the upside of being able to put nickel boluses onto the battlefield. Boy, there's some things that you can do with Thran Temporal Gateway that we have not scratched the surface of yet. I would not be shocked if this showed up as its own sort of semi-archetype in Standard in some way, shape, or form. And certainly, I mean, I've seen weirder things than cards like this showing up in Modern and Legacy. Yeah. Like, it's not likely, I'm just saying it's possible. Cheating stuff into play is always something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, it's one of those that it's probably not going to work in your limited environments because it's just fairly narrow. This is a card meant for casual play. You can build your deck around it. You can have some really cool interactions with it. I don't see it in any constructed format that isn't on a kitchen table.
Yeah. I mean,
and there's nothing wrong with that.
That's likely where its home is going to end up. Just like Quicksilver Amulet, there aren't really decks in Modern and Legacy that want to abuse it. There have been attempts in the past, and I think that people will attempt with Thran Temporal Gateway. This gives you different options, as we mentioned. Being able to sneak in Planeswalkers is not an easy thing to do. So being able to sneak in Ugin, Karn, 7 mana Karn, Nicol Bolas, Garruk Apex Predator, like being able to sneak in giant Planeswalkers is not something we've really seen a lot of before.
I mean, also thinking about sneaking in sagas.
Sure.
At the end of your turn, Armageddon.
Yeah. See, that's kind of awesome. I love that. That's pretty sweet.
That seems insane.
Sneaking in a saga is adorable. But yeah.
Ridiculous. So maybe it'll get there.
Maybe.
It has potential. Again, I don't think this is for
card
limited.
is too weird to not try.
Yeah.
Right. It's too weird not to be loved by someone.
Yeah.
It just depends on how much it gets from those who play tournaments, I guess is a question. Traxos. Scourge of Krug.
Shout out to Amulet of Krug.
Yeah.
Old school callback.
The land of Krug in general.
Right, the land of Krug, because this is the dragon engine they talked about in those novels.
Yeah.
This is not that little pandering, crappy dragon engine from Antiquities or whatever. It's terrible. Traxos Scourge of Krug is a 4 generic mana rare legendary artifact creature construct. It is a 4 generic mana 7/7 trampler. It enters the battlefield tapped and does an untap during your untap step. Whenever you cast a historic spell, untap Traxos. I'm just going to go down as I think this thing is a bomb and limited.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I think there's so many ways to get it to untap. Then who cares about its draw?
And that's the real key here: is how easy is it to untap it? I think that when I first saw the card, it's a 4 mana 7/7 that enters the battlefield tapped and doesn't untap during your untap step. That is literally the text of Deep Slumber Titan, which was a card from Lorwyn block. But you were required to deal damage to Deep Slumber Titan in order to untap it. Playing a historic spell is much easier than having to shock or ping a Deep Slumber Titan. I think that you are going to very reliably be able to not only play Traxos on 4, go to your untap step and play an artifact, attack with it, and untap it after combat with another artifact. I think that is going to be a very likely scenario. This is well deserving of the Dragon Engine moniker. This is a very good card.
Right.
I do worry about it a little in terms of standard. I feel like this is one of those cards. Artifacts in graveyards kind of have the same problem of that. When the hate's really good, the card isn't good. And right now we're looking at God Pharaoh's Gift is better than it's ever been. People are packing a braids like they've never done before, and so it just feels bad to lose this to a braid. And so I think if nobody's running any real artifact hate, this card is great. But if God forbid other artifacts come and ruin its fun, it may not be very good.
Sure.
So
it gets hit with splash damage.
Sure.
And that could be a way for that to stay out of standard as a result of that. But things change. God Pharaoh's Gift eventually will go away, and maybe we'll see this one shine. But a 4 mana 7/7 Trampler is exciting no matter how you slice it.
I'm a little sad that the type line has too many words in it to also include the word dragon, but mistakes were made.
There has been some light talk in older formats, specifically in Vintage. There's the Workshops deck where your whole deck is artifacts, and they're usually pretty cheap artifacts. And so it's not hard to have a 7/7 Trampler that you're just always, untapping.
Workshop, Mox, Traxos, go.
Trample is not a thing you get in that deck.
Yeah.
So having a trample threat is a big deal.
Yeah, having a literally 3-turn clock. All I need to do is play an artifact every turn for my mono brown deck.
Right, and being able to put your Arcbound Ravager tokens onto a Trampler that is definitely going to get through for damage.
It might not even be bad in Modern. One of the nice ways to get rid of Affinity right now is currently Stony Silence. And so if you can...
It sounds like a great sideboard option in that case.
So even though you're playing things that you can't really activate, they're still untapping Traxos. Or if you can still keep this out fast enough and race to Stony Silence, you still have a 7/7 Trampler that I can just play dumb artifacts and untap. And
it's a heck of a threat.
Yeah,
this card is
worth
super
considering.
Cool. I mean, if I wanted to draft this in an aggro deck when I'm drafting, and I want to make sure I got plenty of historic spells and sealed, but I'm super happy with making this thing happen. Traxos is sweet. SweetUrges Tome, man, so cool, so flavorful. 2 generic mana for an uncommon artifact, 3 generic mana tap, draw a card, then discard a card unless you exile a historic card from your graveyard. So if you have a bunch of stuff already, this is like in late game, you're just drawing cards. And whatever, exile, who cares? And then if you're not, you're just looting, and that's
Looting's also fine.
Looting's also good. So this is good coming and good going. Obviously not good in your aggressive type strategies, but if in your slower type decks, in sealed it's amazing. I would be super happy to get this in sealed.
This is another one that's going to go in my Itali, the Primal Storm deck. Just the first activation is usually going to be a loot. The second activation is usually going to remove whatever you looted. So you're getting up on cards very quickly. We have lots of cheap both legends and artifacts that are going to end up in your graveyard. The Sparring Golem that we just talked about being one of them. And so getting just 3 mana tap draw a card is going to be very easy. And so I really like this card quite a bit.
Now, it also cleverly puts in the term Urzas, as in Urza's Legacy and Destiny. This is where you get that from the cards. Which I
Very nice. And you can see illustrations of various, you can see, I believe that this is a page that has both Karn and the Weatherlight on the other page. Which is, for how thick of a book this is, you would think that they'd be in different chapters, but...
It's right there. You got all the good ideas at once.
Right.
Exactly. But again, in sealed, amazing. Draft, not so much. And in casual, awesome.
I'm happy to play this in draft. I think that it's not every game is going to end on turn 5.
Right.
So I'm happy to have an Urza's Tome in there to just sort of filter things as the game goes along.
If I'm more mid range,
then
I'm happy with this. Mid range control. This card is fantastic. Voltaic Servant.
Oh, the hand.
Check out that hand.
Voltaic key.
It's got a key.
Yeah.
Voltaic Servant is a 2 generic mana, 1/3 common artifact creature construct. At the beginning of your end step, untap target artifact, also known as what voltaic key is doing, also known as what's in his hand. Check out the Thran turbine in the background.
I thought that was a dynamo.
Thran dynamo.
Dynamo, I'm sorry, not turbine.
It's a good target.
Yeah.
There are some interesting constructed playability implications with Voltaic Servant because you have things like Treasure Map and Azor's Gateway that you sort of have to build up to. Another good one is Oracle's Vault. Sunset, I think it's Pyramid of the Pantheon that you have to like put bricks on.
Right.
Usually you have to wait 3 turns. Voltaic Servant speeds up that process, which is very nice. I'm particularly excited with this and Azor's Gateway because of how long it takes Azor. It's supposed to take 5 turns, and you can't even start until turn 3. But Voltaic Servant definitely amplifies that process to a great degree. So I'm interested to see if this card is, because this is an effect that they're very careful with. Voltaic Key was busted for a reason.
I have seen a couple of vintage players say, because Voltaic Key is restricted, so you only get 1 Voltaic Key and 1 time vault, I think it is.
Yes.
And so they were like, can we get a second key? Because, I mean, if you can get to your end step, you untap your vault, and then...
Yeah, that's it.
I'm very interested by this card for all those reasons.
Right. It feels like every time I go towards, like, could it be played in Vintage, I feel kind of like bad. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah. I don't know what I'm saying. I don't know anything about this format. Right. What am I saying? I don't know. Like, it dies
Turns
to a bolt.
Turns out Dragonlord Dramoka is a card.
Sure is.
And Thrag Tusk.
I lost to an Oath deck the other day that was running Arlen Cord and green-red Xenagos, the Planeswalker. Like, they're running... And I love that about Vintage. I love that they keep an open mind where they're so willing to try things.
No,
even if it doesn't necessarily pan out. I really appreciate it.
I just always feel weirdly foolish when I tried to say that, well, Vintage could have a pop-a-dop-a-dop, because I know what I'm doing.
This card is also Traxos' best friend. When it comes in, it untaps Traxos, and then at the end of the turn, it untaps Traxos.
Oh, yeah.
That's a nice one.
I'll take it. I'll
take it.
Congratulations. All right. However, in sealed
take on me.
and in draft, I'm not a huge fan of this card. I think it needs to have very specific applications. I think you want to build brawl decks around it, commander decks around it.
It's another bizarre 2-mana 1/3 that, like, if your opponent has an aggro deck, I guess we're playing it. But like, you're going to need you need specific stuff with this.
Like, I really need a historic spell trigger.
Also, if you load this guy up with all your auras and equipment, it basically has vigilance, which is also kind of cool because it can target itself.
Which is neat. The Weatherlight. Well, first of all, why is this not called the Weatherlight? Okay? You have the Gitrog monster.
The Fall of Thran.
You have the everything, but the friggin' Weatherlight?
Well, it's named on the side of the ship. It's got USS Weatherlight. It's USS Enterprise. It's USS.
No, this is the Weatherlight.
It's the floaty boaty. There's no need for the.
Yes, there is, because it's really important. Whatever. Okay,
to be fair, I think the Black Pearl is called the Black Pearl.
He's proving my point. He's proving my point right now. He's just proving it. Weatherlight, as a 4 generic mana mythic legendary artifact vehicle, is a flying 4/5 that crews for 3. That says whenever it deals combat damage to a player, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a historic card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So basically, Board the Weatherlight is the spell that you get for free every time you hit somebody with the Weatherlight.
Love it.
Also, Smuggler's Copter was the stupidest, most busted thing I've ever seen in my life when you compare.
They're still working out the kinks on how vehicles
It kind of even reminds me a little bit of Dragonlord Ojitai with sort of that anticipate type effect, where even if you hit once, it was basically just all downhill from there. Of like, I'm just sculpting my hand at this point, and I know exactly what I want. And
I really like that all of the crew of the Weatherlight, which we'll get to in the multicolored section, most of the crew of the Weatherlight can drive this thing by itself because it's got crew 3.
All of it but Squee?
And Slimefoot.
And Slimefoot, because Slimefoot's a stowaway. It's not supposed to be.
And Squee, I mean, who's going to hand Squee the keys? Right.
So, hey, Squee, you drive. Yeah, that's a good idea. Now, this is a super mega bomb in limited. It is a monster card. It is incredibly hard to stop. It has amazing stats. Like a 4 or 5 flyer. It only crews for 3. Needless to say, you first pick this in draft. You always slam it and high five your buddies and seal. This card is terrific. Yep. Constructed? Maybe.
I've seen worse cards in Constructed.
I could maybe see it in Mardu vehicles, especially because you want to find your Heart of Kieran's and you want to find your either Flux,
Harvesters. I mean, you're running a lot of legends in that deck as well. So
Get your DePaulas, get your P and the Lars.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right, because DePaula also crews this, and then she has that super cool ability. You pay X mana and yada yada.
Pia crews this by herself with her Thopter friend.
It's true.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. It's certainly nowhere near the power level of for example, Heart of Kirin.
Right.
But you can only have one of those in play at a time. The Weatherlight you can do more with.
Yeah. Karn, Scion of Urza. This card is just one of the flagship cards of the set. It is one of the planeswalkers of the set. Karn has returned. He now has clothes for some reason, which is fine. It is a 4 generic mana, 5 loyalty starting legendary planeswalker Karn. It is, of course, a mythic rare. Its +1 says reveal the top 2 cards of your library. An opponent chooses one of them, put that card into your hand, and exile the other with a silver counter on it. -1, put a card you own with a silver counter on it from exile into your hand. And has -2 of create a 0/0 colorless construct artifact creature token with, quote, this creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. This card's amazing.
Card's really
So it's important to note that you don't get to see what card your opponent chose.
Correct.
So when you take, so the -1's a bit of a gamble.
No, you
it's
reveal.
Oh, you do reveal it.
You reveal
Okay.
the top 2
Reveal.
cards. Yeah.
Okay.
So they're going to give you the worst of the 2. No doubt about it. But you're going to be able to get it next turn.
Right.
So,
if you really want it. Yeah.
Right. If you really want to. Or you just let it out there and hang out.
Right.
And chill.
It also makes its own army. Those colorless constructs are going to be no joke, especially with all the treasure that's available and all that kind of stuff in standard. It's a 4 mana planeswalker. Historically, 4 mana planeswalkers that can protect themselves. That can immediately go up to 6. It comes in with 5 loyalty. It goes up to 6, even if it's not protecting itself.
That's a lot.
Which is a lot, absolutely a lot. Very impressive card. I think that belt does have a story behind it. I think that there was. I forget who I saw the Vorthoses were talking about of like, oh, I recognize that piece of clothing from somewhere.
Look, man, if everybody's not kung fu fighting, what are we doing?
Yeah, I don't know.
What's going on with our lives?
And so, there have been 3 Karns printed now. I don't think that this is as good as Karn Liberated. I think that Karn Liberated is bananas. This is probably better than Karn Silver Golem. So
that bar's low these days.
yeah, I mean it's pretty low.
It's really
so
low.
there have been 3 printed, which means that I think this one wins the silver medal. Put that one up on the board for
Card Scion of Urza.
I'm Scion right now. You can't hear me, but I'm Scion.
Wow. It definitely has the potential to be a format controlling all-star, to have the format rotate around this guy and making his stuff and destroying his artifacts because they're so good and trying to get out of that card advantage engine because he goes to 6 immediately. I've heard Modern talk about this, Standard talk about this. It is unbelievable and limited, so go ahead and take it all the time and play it always. It's not even a question.
Also, speaking of rotate, this globe, I need Wizards to produce a beach ball that has the map of Dominaria on it, because that's how I want the map. Because right now we've got the flat map that I really like by the Red Epic. I think
Flat maps need love
Jason
too.
Blando. But that's a Mercator projection, right? We're
Mercator?
stretching. Well, it would be a Mercadian projection when it comes to Urza.
Hey, y'all.
With the reference
Down here in Mercator.
You've never heard of a Mercator projection? The map. Let me explain how map nerdery works.
Awesome. Oh, we cartographing up in here?
Amateur cartographer, Ruben Bressler. So if you have the world, you actually get to have a scale frozen wastes, and you get to see that Alaska isn't 3 times as big as Texas, for example, and you get some really cool effects when you actually have, and also a beach ball. Who doesn't want a beach ball?
I just thought you were saying like Mercadia in a funny way.
No, it's a Mercator projection, and also Mercadia.
Hey, y'all.
Unbelievable. There's also Urza in the background in the stained glass window, which I think is really nice. Call back to Urza with its name in the name of the card as well.
Yeah, I mean this whole thing is just a huge home run. This card was awesome. It's one of the strengths of Dominaria by itself is that even if almost the entire rare sheet was spoiled by an FAQ 2 weeks before the spoiler season even started, people were still crazy excited over this.
Absolutely.
Still super excited when we got to post on Gathering Magic the actual card image and the token image. Karn is a home run.
Yep.
We start with our multicolored cards with Adeliz, the Cinder Wind. A red, a blue, and a generic mana for a 2/2 uncommon legendary human wizard that has flying and haste, and whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, wizards you control get +1/+1 until end of turn.
Yeah, this basically gives all your wizards prowess. This is your wizard, one of your wizard lords. This is your uncommon wizard lord. This card is really good. 2/2 flying haste is playable by itself. And with the additional of whenever you play a removal spell, pump your team is super nice. Yeah, this card is very, very pushed.
But I would imagine it feels really bad to die with a board full of wizards because then you died with still out of leaves.
Still on the lead?
Still had all the leaves. Well, see, that's what you also say when you attack for the win.
Right.
You're like, I still had all the leaves. I don't know. Do you see
Or you
her?
could even
She's
do
right
that,
there.
as your legendary creature. If you do like your, Urza's Hissy Fit and you wipe the board, you're like, still got Adeliz. Your opponent's like, everything's exiled. No, not everything.
I also like Adeliz because it's a different flavor of blue-red than we get from Joyra.
Yes.
Joyra, also from the Gitu, also went to the Tolarian Academy, but Adeliz, definitely a different feel to her, even than the card Joyra of the Gitu or the card Joyra that will be coming up momentarily.
Absolutely. All right. Next up is Arvad the Cursed. He is our resident vampire on the Weatherlight because you need one.
Yeah.
Krovax was like, gotta check that box.
Yep.
A black, a white, and 3 generic mana for a 3/3 legendary vampire knight. It is uncommon. It has death touch and lifelink and other legendary creatures you control.
Jesus.
Get +2/+2. This card is real. This card is very good. This card is playable essentially because you're going to have legends coming out your ears.
Yeah.
Even by itself, a 5 mana 3/3 death touch lifelink is awesome.
enough.
It's great. It's doing good. It's killing whatever's going to block it or you're blocking with it.
Yep.
Arvad is neat.
Angsty Arvad is definitely a good meme. His armor is going to be very difficult to produce for whichever cosplayer is planning on playing Arvad because of that stained glass. Man, they made it difficult on the cosplay community with the Benelish armor.
All for the sake of pretty.
All for the sake of pretty. Vampire, relevant card type. Knight, relevant card type. And
Vampire is relevant.
Yep. I'm very pleased to have a copy of this in my deck. Lots of the uncommon legends means that it's really even better in limited.
Yeah. I mean, there's a chance for you to drop this and like your team gets monstrous.
Absolutely.
And just goes
Could
and gets
could
it.
be an overrun, theoretically.
Clearly.
You can go 2-drop legend, 3-drop legend, and or 4-drop legend in there and immediately drop it and pump 1, maybe 2. I mean, in a miracle, you're pumping 3 creatures at a time. But yeah, Arvad is just very, very, very good.
And he's a weird character. He's that kind of like tortured vampire. He doesn't want to be a vampire, but he is a vampire.
I really like the way that the vampirism in the various different sets is treated differently. As a dungeon master and a player, I have played lots of vampires in the past, and I've never really talked about this, but I sort of treat vampirism in certain planes of existence. This was actually very much how I thought of it. Actually works very well in Dominaria, but especially on Innistrad. It feels a lot like, I'm a diabetic. It feels a lot like fantasy diabetes, where you have to feed this. It's not a curse, but it's a thing I have to deal with.
It's an affliction that you are.
It is a affliction that can't ever be fully healed, that you have to pay attention to and take care of yourself over. And especially for the Innistrad vampires, who after a month of not feeding will go crazy. And I always treated that very similarly in my head in the Dungeons and Dragons
So you're
sense.
saying that you're our Arvad?
Yes.
Okay.
I am an angsty.
You make us
Angsty
better then. You
vampire.
give us +2/+2.
Well, I won't abandon the magic mics.
Right. And
My destiny is to serve at Evan's side. This illness of having puns means I must trust my faith more. And I've lost myself.
and myself less.
And myself less. Yeah.
Right. Basically, he could kill us one day.
Right.
And that's what that happens. It's in the nature, whatever.
Right, but I also make you, my other legendary creatures, more powerful.
Oh.
Absolutely. All right. Ariel, Knight of Windgrace.
There's Windgrace
Oh my
again.
God, one of my favorite cards of the set. A black, a white, and 2 generic mana for a 4/4 legendary rare human knight. It has vigilance. It has a white and 2 generic mana. Tap : create a 2/2 white knight creature token with vigilance. A black, tap, Tap X, untap knights you control, destroy target creature with power X or less. Note, power, not converted mana cost.
Or total number of creatures. Total power X or less.
Power.
I like this just because it gives you a different angle of attack with the knights. You know, we talked about the knights during the white segment of sort of we talked about them as token generators, we talked about them as attackers and blockers, but this is a really neat way to just have you can use your knights as removal, which I don't think, we think about it as, you'll remove things when you attack and block, but oh no, we don't even need to do that. And I think that's a really neat way to use those cards, and specifically that creature type.
Another cool thing with this is that you get to attack with all of your Vigilance Knights, and before blockers use that black ability, which is nuts.
Yes.
Each color combination has an uncommon legend and a rare legend, I think, or a mythic legend of some kind. I think that's how it balances out. We just saw Arvad with the black-white, and now Ariel. Again, with a reference to Windgrace, Lord Windgrace being one of the early planeswalkers, and harkening back here with a very potent, very powerful 4/4 for 4 in white-black, which is not a color combination you usually get, and then also 3
She's
abilities.
riding a panther?
Oh, yeah, she
Love
is.
it.
I mean, I want History of Benalia, and then I want Ariel, and then I want to smash for a bajillion bajillion damage, tapping them to kill whatever their best thing is.
Nice draft deck. You opened History of Benalia and Ariel Windgrace. What altar did you sacrifice on to open those packs?
No. This would be my constructed deck because,
I see.
Unlimited not going to happen. And if it does, high five,
But
take
she
pictures, show on
herself is
Instagram.
playable and limited.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, very.
Oh my God.
Absolutely.
This is an army in a can. She brings her own army. She destroys creatures with that army. She works with all of your existing knights.
It's a multicolored card that you want to take first pack. Usually multicolored cards need to be excruciatingly good in order to lock you into 2 colors, and this is that level.
This is excruciatingly good. This is crazy good. Yeah. This is like I still can't believe this isn't mythic. I don't understand why this wouldn't be mythic.
True, it's not mythic. That's crazy.
It is a very, very powerful card. It's super, super sweet. Daragaz Reincarnated is a green, a red, a black, and 4 generic mana. So that is 7 mana for a 7/7 mythic legendary dragon with flying, trample, and haste. And if it would die, instead you exile it with 3 egg counters on it. You know how many often we use egg counters.
That's right.
At the beginning of your upkeep, if Daragaz is exiled with an egg counter on it, remove an egg counter from it. And if it has no egg counters on it, return it to the battlefield. Rawr. It's a reanimation target. That's what this is.
It's
and I'm willing to try.
This is a heck of a dragon. I mean, 7 power in evasive haste is nothing to be laughed at. Daragaz, the first, was one of the cycle of the original dragons from the invasion block,
right?
And was one of the dragons that helped fend off the invasion alongside Rith and all the rest of them. This card is an upgrade over that card for sure. I remember back when this was Suspend. This is how Suspend worked.
That's exactly how Suspend works.
Which is a problem. I don't know why we can't just have Suspend
Old
happen.
man wrestlers.
Just like the Warcry Phoenix doesn't have Battalion printed on it. I'm not a,
Well, also,
just like
the reason
Inventors Fair doesn't have Metalcraft. Like, let's.
That was weird. You can't. Well, you don't get a cast trigger off this.
Sure.
Suspend gave you cast.
Okay.
This doesn't cast, just puts it on the
back
battlefield.
on the battlefield. Much different, you're right.
Which is neat and different.
I'm interested to see how Daragaz came back, because when we last left them, they were busy throwing themselves into a volcano.
Yes.
After they had tried attacking, I think it was the Weatherlight, and Karn got into their head and was like, "What are you doing?" And Daragaz was like, "Oh, you're right, this is bad," and then basically killed themselves. And so something had to have brought Daragaz back, and I'm really curious as to what that is, because that wasn't covered when I looked on the internet.
Well, I'm thinking it's zombify, maybe reanimate.
I'm fine with all of this.
Recurring nightmare.
The Firstborn Reincarnated, or whatever the hell that card's called.
I'm totally okay with that because this is your reanimation target.
The
It has
Eldest Reborn, that's what it
flying, trample, haste. Those are 3 magical words you want in anything that you reanimate. This is the target that you want.
Yep.
So yeah, it costs 7 mana, whatever. No. it has no restrictions and it comes and gets you. Garna the Bloodflame, one of the most pushed uncommons I've ever seen.
This is another card that everybody tagged me in. It was like, Aaron, graveyards! And I was like, 5 mana is a lot, you guys. Like, for 5 mana, I better get a neck rub, dinner, and a ride home. Like,
wow. Well, for a red, a black, and 3 generic mana, you get a 3/3 legendary uncommon human warrior with flash. And when she, Garna the Bloodflame, enters the battlefield, return to your hand all creature cards in your graveyard that were put there from anywhere this turn, from anywhere, where they were milled, where they were killed, where they were made you to discard them in some fashion. And also, other creatures you control have haste.
Yeah. There are some really interesting things going on, even if it didn't have that middle section, because being a flash historic trigger is not a thing that's very common in this set. I think it's just this and Wrath.
Yeah.
I think that's it. I could be wrong. Oh no, there's also the legendary Wizard Lord.
Yes.
But it's very rare that you get to get a historic trigger mid-combat, and so you're able to surprise people with that. Oh, by the way, I can flash this in at the end of turn and then untap and have a Fires of Yavimaya. Being able to unload my entire hand, play my, presumably things like Siege Gang Commander or my 5/5 for 6 that I wouldn't normally get to attack with, I get to immediately crush into the red zone.
Oh, yeah.
The other ability of being able to rebuy all of the creatures that went to your graveyard from anywhere this turn doesn't just mean combat. You can get back your cycling creatures, you can get back anything that you discarded to your 3/2 lifelinker in the Spectral Sanctum Spirit or whatever that is. There are so many interesting things that you can do with Garn of the Blood Filling.
Discard things with Jaya. Discard
there you
3
go.
cards. Sure.
And then rebuy them all, absolutely. This is another character that I have no idea who this is. There are
with
so
that.
many legends. There's so many legends in this set that we just don't know anything about. And this is just another on that list.
I mean, this could be Joe of the Blow Flame, and I don't care. Like, who cares? The card is terrific. This card is sweet. If you've never played with a Fires of Yavimaya type setup, it is okay just to end of turn play this, and then on your turn play your 6-drop that is really good, and just
Get in there immediately.
Don't focus on the idea that you have to get maximum value.
Right.
That if I don't get back at least 2 creatures, I'm doing it wrong. No. This card is great all by its lonesome. It doesn't need a lot of help, and that's more or less kind of the long and short of it. But for 5 mana, I think Dave Humphreys previewed this on Twitter for a reason. This is a developer's dream card. It's like, we're just going to push things and just see what crazy stuff happens.
Yep.
And as a result, it's Garnet. That's awesome. Grand Warlord
Queen.
Rada. Yas Queen, also known as Yas Queen. It is a green, red, and 2 generic mana for a rare legendary elf warrior. She's a 3/4 with haste. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control attack, add that much mana in any combination of red and or green. Until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. We had Rada, Heir to Keld, way back in the day when she was essentially a teenager.
Yep. 2/2 for 2 that had 2 mana granting abilities of varying types.
Of only herself. Whereas now she's twice the
a warlord.
size.
Yeah.
She's 3/4. She's letting everybody make mana. And she's in charge.
Yeah.
That's a bad mamma jamma right there.
Yeah, a little bit of controversy around this card because Rada came back obviously older and is a little more sturdier in her later years. And, some people were musing over the fact that she isn't, hot anymore, or conventionally hot. And, some people were ready to
save lives.
Right, some people were ready to kind of dismiss her because of that, but you've seen some people kind of come forward and say that this is a noticeable step for art where, you're showcasing her as being a sturdy, dare I say, swole. She's a woman, she's a grand warlord, and with that experience comes physical strength. And, you see her with the dead body in front of her with her foot on it, like, I did
with
this.
the sword totally not covered in blood.
Yeah.
And her arms covered in blood.
Yeah,
which means she beat that guy to death.
Just very proud of this and saying, I did it, and what? And you see the army behind her. This is a really great arc for this character, and I'm really glad that they're doing that. And even by itself, a 3/4 with haste at 4, sure.
No, it's very good. And the idea, the story arc of essentially she was a teenager, maybe 16, 17, and now she's a grown-ass woman, and, she don't need no man.
Another interesting thing
she got a
about
sword
Rada-
in this man who thought he could bring some game, and she explained what game was.
Yep.
And she
Another
killed him.
interesting thing about Rada is that she is a character that had a Planeswalker Spark that never ignited. And we get very few of those in Magic. It happens. And I believe she lost hers in the Mending, but she was aware, and folks were aware that she had it, but now she's just aging normally, I think is how that was explained.
Sure.
Weirdly, I think Grand Warlord Rada is worse in Limited than in Constructed. For a couple of reasons.
Really?
One, there are so many 4-mana 4/4s that the 3/4 haste is actually kind of bad. What are we casting with our extra mana when we're attacking? Like, we're playing a 2-drop and a 3-drop and presumably not trading on those first couple turns and then getting 3 more mana to play another Warpath Ghoul? I'm not very interested in that. This is Grand Warlord Rada is much better when you can craft an entire stratagem around her and be able to take advantage of all those extra things. Use things like probably Tormenting Voice and other effects that are relatively cheap, whereas this is the top of your curve, as opposed to having other 4-drops in your deck, other 5-drops in your deck. I'm less impressed with her. I mean, I'm still going to play her, don't get me wrong. A 3-power, 4-toughness haste creature is always going to be playable. But I think that, I think that this is standard. She's better in standard than she will be in draft, I think.
It's possible. I mean, well, first of all, I would say that she's the worst in sealed because you can't really control what you got and what you'll be able to play off of her. And she's a little bit better in draft because you're able to shape your curve in your deck and know that you're able to play things off of her ability if you get her out. And then, of course, once you get to standard and or a commander brawl type situation, you're really able to make all of the pieces work with exactly the numbers that you want to use with multiple copies of her and so on and so forth. So, like, she's neat. The original Rada was never that awesome.
It was fine. You were able to play original Rada on turn 2 and then a morph on turn 3, and then when you attacked and got the 2 red trigger, you could unmorph red Achroma, which was the big thing that you could do with Rada. But yeah, original Rada never really made a break in at standard. This one I think has a chance though.
I appreciate the art, the story, sort of the arc, more so than I'm like, oh my god, this card's going to be constructed ridiculousness. Like, no, that's Karn. Go let Karn do that. It's fine. Let Rada be a BA, and I'm all right with that too. Halar the Fire Fletcher. Oh, Halar. Green, red, and a generic mana. Halar! Halar! Woo! It's a green, a red, and a generic mana for a 3/3 uncommon legendary elf archer that has trample. Whenever you cast a spell, if that spell was kicked, put a +1/+1 counter on Halar the Fire Fletcher. Then Halar deals damage equal to the number of +1/+1 counters on it to each opponent. Again, we're back to the kicker thing.
Sure.
It's weird.
This is a really good payoff for the kicker thing.
Well, yeah, if you get it. I mean, like, it's great because it's
tough.
a 3-mana, 3/3 trampler that's
already fine. Yeah.
There's burn spells that have kicker.
Sure.
There's ramp
Goblin.
spells that have kicker. Right. There's ways to kick things and get this to pay off.
This character is noteworthy in that when Kelly Diggs was playing at the pre-release, he clarified that Halar is a gender-neutral character.
Yes.
That Halar apparently has some... In terms of their origin, I guess they didn't really know where they came from, or they were between 2 different elven families, or there was some ambiguity in terms of their origin, and they chose to kind of channel that by having that reflect in their identity. And so a lot of people who also identify that way and live that way have really related to this character, and so that's a neat little lore nugget about this character.
Because Halar is a they, them, is that right?
Yes, whereas Ashiok was Ashiok and didn't have really any. This is a they and them type situation.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
As opposed to when you get into the LGBTQ PIA issue, there are lots of discussion. There are lots of different ways that people identify themselves, and so to have a character like Ashiok, that's fine, but there are people who don't identify themselves that way, and Halar is much more in that vein.
Yeah.
Also notable, Fire Fletcher, I think I want to point out that one of the most famous Dungeons & Dragons characters in televised D&D was a character named Vexalia, who had an item called the Blazing Bowstring that allowed you to do things like the art here, turning your arrows into basically fire arrows, which Halar gets to do as well.
I mean, clearly it's on curve in terms of like power and stats. If you're in sealed and you're in green red, this is an auto include. If you're in draft, this is a easy build around me, where you're trying to obviously look at more kicker cards. It is good on its sort of on the base stats.
Stands on its own.
Yeah, which is fine. The kicker thing is cute. Maybe it'll get better, because you'll be focused on a little bit more.
Right.
But I wouldn't count on it. It's just not something. I think ultimately I'm happy with this being a 3/3 trampler for 3. Maybe it'll get bigger one day at some point. Jorah, Weatherlight Captain. A red, a blue, and 2 generic mana for a mythic legendary human artificer. She is a 3/3 that only has 1 beautiful line of text. Whenever you cast a historic spell, draw a card. I've said it ever since I've seen it. I've said it every time. This card is dangerous.
This card is very dangerous.
I think it's fine.
There aren't a ton of what we call eggs in the business. There aren't a ton of eggs in Standard. There
Not
aren't
recently, since they recalled them all.
That's true. About 200 million eggs.
Heyo.
But in particular, the what I'm referring to is the 1 mana fixing, draw a card, chromatic star, chromatic sphere, effects like that. Not a ton of those to make Joyra super dangerous for Standard. Might be a tool for Modern. Could definitely be dangerous. We just saw Clark Clan Ironworks win a Grand Prix in the hands of Matt Nass, and so. You know, it's possible that something like this, whenever you have a repeatable effect like this, it's every time you cast a historic spell. Definitely going to be a very popular Brawl commander. It's already, she's already got the 3/3 for 4 Hill Giant stats, so she can, you know, tangle with the best of them. You know, the art is spectacular. That outfit, Nadine Grendelmeyer, better known as Nissa Cosplay, was in the Joyra outfit for a good portion of Grand Prix Seattle.
Nice.
And yeah, I think that the pirate captain version of Joyra definitely appeals to me. I'm very pleased.
I mean, I think she's a 3/3 in a drawback type of way.
Sure.
So you can kill her with a lightning strike or a lightning bolt in Modern because like this is the type of card that has to be stopped.
Yeah.
It has to be stopped because you're like, all right, on the stack, because it says whenever you cast, which means you're automatically going to get that card. Like, all right, kill her. You only got 1 card. That's enough.
I'm also pleased. I'm a little sad that it's not more artificer based because Joyra historically was an artificer.
Yeah.
But we're drawing cards because we play artifacts and legendaries and sagas. But artifacts, I think, is the flavor around Joyra. She finally gets the artificer creature type.
Sure.
But she's not doing the tinkering with artifacts thing that you expect from your artificers. You know what I mean?
I mean, I don't know what I expect from my artificers, but
drawing a card is certainly a thing I'm interested in.
I'm
so
all right.
I'm not unhappy with the card.
This is relevant to my interests.
I'm very pleased in this is a powerful Magic card sense.
Yeah, this card is like straight bananas, and it just this card is like it just takes one stupid busted interaction for this card to blow up.
I think it's fine.
I hope it's fine.
So, I mean, we still live in a world where Paradox Engine exists. We now live in a world that Gilded Lotus and Power Stone Shards exist. Like, we can combo off with Joyra. We just need a lot of mana to get going. This is a diesel engine we need to turn over a couple times.
This card is
Throw in either Flux Reservoir and
there we go. Perfect.
Oh man, I love this card. I mean, look, I like dangerous, scary cards. I don't want them to bust anything, but I enjoy them because they're exciting. Yeah. This card is very exciting. Whether it works or not, who knows?
Here's the combo: is the 5 mana 4/4 that bounces a historic creature, right? And then you have that with 5 mana worth of mana artifacts, and then you just keep bouncing them back and forth, and then other Flux Reservoir your opponent.
How do you bounce? What
you
does
have
that
2
have
of
to do
them.
With the...
And you bounce historic cards back and forth.
Right. How do you?
You have the Paradox Engine. Sorry, you have the Paradox Engine in play.
Okay.
Right, you have Paradox Engine and Joyra Weatherlight Captain,
a lot of pieces.
and 2 other 5 mana artifacts and some more mana.
We are
All we
moving
have to do
on.
is
We're
build this
done.
Rube Goldberg
All right,
machine.
Here we go. Jonah, Archmage Eternal is a white, red, blue, and a generic mana for a rare legendary human wizard. It is a 4/3 flyer that you may pay white, blue, black, red, green rather than pay the mana cost for spells that you cast.
Love it.
This card's great.
This is your only option as a 5-color general for Brawl.
It's true.
It is a 4-power flyer for 4 mana, which is no joke. It's just a rare. I thought this would be a mythic for sure.
Yeah.
It is a Jeskai card. So you are, I'm not sure that there are eternal implications to this card, but with the Fist of the Sun's ability on the card, it's certainly possible. You're able to play, for example, Ulamogs or Emrakuls for white, blue, black, red, green, which is a huge deal.
Right.
Well, Dino Lightning Bolt is a big downside
Absolutely.
in older formats.
There's a reason it has 3 toughness, just like Jorah does.
Yeah.
You got to keep these things in check. Jodah, in and of itself, is a super cool card.
And a big nod to the Fourth Host community. They've been begging for Jodah. Jodah might be the most mainest of characters in the Magic storyline to have never gotten a Magic card before. And now Jodah has a Magic card.
Is mainest a word?
Mainest? It is now.
I mean, you creating whatever you want, buddy. It's your world.
You my mainest man, though.
Hey, bro.
So
They
Is
also
that on your
work-
mainest deck or your sideboard? Just,
Right.
okay.
Wow. Well, they worked in Chronicles and
Love
the flavor
it.
text of this one,
Perfect.
which I thought was terrific.
Jodah.
Jodah is not a card I think is that good in limited for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
You just can't take advantage of it.
the mana
It's-
requirement is very
super tough.
difficult. But if you can cast a 4/3 flyer for 4, that's pretty good.
You're doing okay, but don't stretch for this. Don't make this a centerpiece of your deck because it's not going to get there.
Probably not worth first picking because of the mana requirement. It's
Yeah. All right. So our next card has a very special guest. Let's see who it is and what they have to say.
Hey, Magic Mikes. Brian David Marshall here, Pro Tour historian, commentator, comic book writer, and game designer. And I'm really excited to be here talking to you about a card from Dominaria that I am just have found already a home. I've got an empty sleeve waiting for this card already, and it's Muldrotha the Gravetide. This is a giant Sultai legend, 3 and Sultai to cast. It's a 6/6, and while it's in play, you get to play cards out of your graveyard, which is exactly what I want to be doing in my CDC deck, which is built around milling cards, trying to get spider spawning into my graveyard and then doing all sorts of degenerate stuff with spider spawning. But, you know, along the way, there's some other cards that you go by that you might want to get back. I might want to get back a Gaia's Cradle. I might want to get back an Oversold Cemetery, which is such a powerful card in that deck, you know, getting to return your best creatures. Super, super excited to play with this. You know, is this card going to be a card that people play in Standard? I don't know. It's very powerful. The ability to play multiple creature type, multiple permanent types out of your graveyard every turn. You know, get that land, get that creature, get that enchantment, maybe get that planeswalker back. You know, very exciting. Certainly there have been times where a card like this would be not only good enough for Standard, but maybe even game breaking out of a sideboard in a control mirror. I don't know. You know, we could see it, but right now it is definitely going into my Sidisi Brood Tyrant commander deck, and is going to help me get closer to making infinite spiders and wolves and zombies and all that kind of cool stuff. It's also going to be the first brawler for me. I'm going to build a brawl deck around this card. Absolutely. Just want to play with this as much as possible. Really excited to play with it in these kind of multiplayer formats, which tend to go a little longer and let you have a lot of fun with these cards. And I feel like this card is going to be one that I'm going to be seeking out multiple foils for. Yeah, just super, super stoked for it. Pretty excited for you guys too. Excited to get this, have these preview shows back. So good luck. Congratulations on your Kickstarter, and can't wait to see the show. Bye.
Oh man, that was great. Thank you very much, BDM, Mr.
Thank
Ryan
you.
David Marshall, for helping out with the show. Been super awesome. Muldrotha, you know what? I'm just gonna do this.
I was just gonna say, I don't need to
I'll
be here.
handle this. So Muldrotha the Gravetide is 3, a black, a green, and a blue. She's a legendary creature, elemental avatar, 6/6. During each of your turns, you may play up to 1 permanent card of each permanent type from your graveyard. If a card has multiple permanent types, choose one as you play it. This is Multani's child. She is essentially his daughter, for lack of a better term. This is a really exciting card for, I know Vintage Oath is really excited about this card as an Oath of Druids target, to be able to oath into this. And then as part of the milling that comes with Oath of Druids, you can then pull a Moxen, pull a land, pull a creature. This is really exciting. I know Abe Sargent from Gathering Magic. He posted a budget commander list for about $35, which really leans on artifacts and enchantments like the capsules, the fonts from Theros block, the vessels from Shadows over Innistrad block, having permanents do things for you that spells do, but being able to play those and getting value out of this. This is the card I'm most excited about from this set. I'm in the same camp as BDM, where I'm ready to sleeve up a commander deck. I'm ready to play a brawl deck around this card. I'm so excited for this card. And the art is fantastic. Shout out to Jason Rainville, who detailed his process a little bit on Twitter and how he, you can see the stages of Muldrotha and how you came to the final product. And I'm so excited about this card. So excited.
All right. It is a terrific card. No.
I mean, it is spectacular. It is very, very good.
This is going to be one of the sort of key cards, I think, from the set. This card is a monster bomb and limited. Like, you stretch to make this card work.
Yeah.
If you can make it work, make it work.
It is rare that you pick a 2-color card first, let alone a 3-color card. You make this 3-color card.
And again, we've said this throughout the show, it requires very little setup. You know, you're going to be doing things just until you get to 6 mana. And if you're playing creatures, they're bound to die, unfortunately. You know, if you're playing any sort of enchantments or whatever, it's just naturally filling your graveyard. You're just going to get that value out of it. Card's fantastic.
I just can't imagine, even in Standard, untapping with this card and losing. it's got to be so hard.
Yeah.
Like, it's got to be really tough.
You have to try.
Like, oh, I got to untap with this card?
Right.
What? And then I just start looking at my graveyard and doing stuff and things. Because, like, yeah, this is clearly, I think, like, this is your commander, it's Commander in Brawl, this is going to be the greatest casual card, blah, blah, blah. And then I think, you're the Oath players, and then even some standard players are like, if I were to, ramp into this thing, it's kind of stupid.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So this card is amazing.
Yeah.
I'm out.
I'm good.
I got nothing else.
I cede the rest of my time
Hey, man.
to the Gravetide herself.
Oh,
But yeah, I mean, these cards were quite good.
Muldrotha started from the bottom, and now she here.
Well, a lot of it's still on the bottom until we cast it.
We've all started from the bottom, haven't we?
Gotta let the top do what it wants. We talked about this. Oath of Teferi is next. Teferi, who took Nissa's place, as it were.
Idris Elba realness.
Hello.
Yeah.
This card is awesome. It is a white, a blue, and 3 generic mana for a rare legendary enchantment. When Oath of Teferi enters the battlefield, exile another target permanent you control, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. Oh, and by the way, you may activate the loyalty abilities of the planeswalkers you control twice each turn rather than only once.
Wow.
That is a heck of a line of text. I'm a big fan of that.
Whoo! I mean, if I'm playing your Planeswalker and I have anything that makes creatures so I can, I can help essentially, make sure they don't die, I'm able to play Oath of Teferi and activate my Planeswalker again versus already just activating it once a turn. All my future Planeswalkers are insane. Like, this Oath is sweet. I love it. I think this Oath is fantastic.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, 5 mana is a steep cost, and you need to have some things going on the battlefield already in order to make Oath of Teferi not a 5 mana do nothing the turn you play it. But if you're able to do that, the blink effect is very powerful, and that loyalty effect is extremely potent.
It is super good. I would note that ultimately you probably shouldn't run this unlimited. It's not worth it. This is a constructed card, whether it's casual, whether it's standard. This is a constructed card. It's not a limited card. It's not good and limited. It's not worth paying 5 mana to blink a thing.
Yeah.
It's just not. And that's okay, because not all cards need to be there for limited. This was certainly one of them.
Yeah.
All right. Next up, we have a special guest for Primeval's Glorious Rebirth.
Oh, man.
Who could it be?
Hey, Magic Mikes. Aintrazi here from the Think Twice MTG podcast. And I also have articles that go up on Friday at gatheringmagic.com. And the card I chose is Primeval's Glorious Rebirth. This card is insane. It's a card that reanimates all legendary permanents from your graveyard, puts them back on the battlefield. So this means it'll bring back all the planeswalkers, all the legendary lands, even your artifacts like a Mach Sabre or something. This card is, I think it's absurd. If you thought Obzat's Aid was okay, this card is infinitely better. Like, I want to be able to bring back Oath of Teferi, Teferi the Planeswalker, Nissa Vital Force, plus Nissa, Ultimate Nissa, just do it all. The card seems awesome, and there's a lot of ways to fuel it. You can play it in like an Esper Solar Flare type deck with Leon Death's Majesty, have a little Reanimator theme, maybe like some Razaketh, Scarab God. You can play like a Compelling Argument, or Strategic Planning, or Chart a Course. There's a lot of ways to fill your graveyard. There's lots of ways to fill your graveyard up, or even play Ipni Roulette. But either way, I'm for sure going to build a deck around this, and I'm excited to play with it. It's going to be really nice to bring back 4 or 5 Planeswalkers and maybe a Scarab God or whatever. And the drawback is supposed to be about having to control a legendary permanent or legendary creature or Planeswalker. I think that's going to be a lot easier to do. All you have to do is just play a god, play the Scarab God, or play Kefnet the Mindful. They're very hard to deal with, and they turn on all your legendary sorceries. So I'm excited for Primeval's Glorious Rebirth. You should be excited too. It's going to be very, very nice to bring back all those things. All right, guys. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Ollie, for
This is the Ollie Aintraziest
Yes.
card. It is true. As soon
super
as he
Ollie.
came up, I was like, of course! He's going to play Primeval's Glorious Rebirth in his blue-green deck.
And only him could make the card is great, but I feel like Ali's one of those players that if you or I tried to play a deck like he just listed, we would crash and burn.
No.
But
Yeah.
Ali can take it to an open at top 8. That's just what he does.
I mean, the effect is extremely powerful. Being able to reanimate all legendary permanents, which now includes planeswalkers, as we referenced earlier in a previous episode with Yawgmoth's Dark Bargain. Vile Bargain, whatever it is. Being able to reanimate planeswalkers is not a thing that appears very often, and now we got 2 in this whole set. You were referencing earlier how Darigaz came back. Is this not the...
So if I understand it correctly, so the Primevals realized that I guess they all united and threw themselves into a tar pit, if I understand it correctly, and then through that came the big bad, and then they led the attack on the Weatherlight, and then that's when Karn was like, "Hey girl, what are you doing?" And then Darigaz was like, "You're right, we've kind of lost our way," and then threw himself in the volcano. But this came first. This is when they realized they could do better dead, and they could bring back the thing, and this is what led to that moment.
Interesting.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, being able to bring back legendary lands and all the planeswalkers and all these other crazy legends that you're playing with, it's just, this is a big, over-the-top, go crazy type of spell.
Yeah.
It's not good in limited. Don't play it.
Yeah.
It's not going to work out the way you want it to. However, if you're building a silly, commander deck, silly brawl deck, amazing casual deck, if you're trying to make this thing work in standard, I think you have the tools to at least try to do so.
Yeah, it's possible to play this in limited. I mean, you're probably playing it in sealed.
Maybe?
It rebuys a lot of stuff. I mean, effects like this, like Boneyard Parlay, for example, typically are playable in sealed and in some limited formats also. If you're planning on just trading off legendary permanents willy-nilly, this card is definitely something that you're interested in.
I mean, the fact that it's a legendary sorcerer means you already have to have a legend on the board and have legends in the graveyard in a limited environment that's going to come back for 7 mana.
That's a problem.
Which to me, I think is almost a bridge too far. And maybe it'll work. I don't know. I mean, more power to you, go nuts. I would just not suggest you do so.
Yeah, and it's obviously not a first pick. Like, this is the deck building requirement is not just being a white and black deck. It is having
lots.
10 legendary creatures in your deck, probably.
Right.
That's a lot.
That's a whole bunch. And again, you have to have one out, and it has to have 7 mana. Yep. Has to live, blah, 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 blah. This to me is a lot. But the card itself is really sweet.
The payoff is huge, though.
Yes. And thank you, Mr. Aintrazi, as always, for your participation. Wrath Capuchin, Ship's Mage, is a blue, white, and 2 generic mana for a uncommon legendary human wizard. He is a 3/3 flash flyer, and you may cast historic spells as though they had flash. Yeah.
That's a big deal.
That's really
good.
This
is Danitha's bro, right?
Heyo.
I think these are the Sibs. Younger brother Raph is, having that historic trigger with flash is a big deal. And now for the rest of the game, all of those historic triggers of, this creature gets +1/+1, or tap down target creature, or reanimate something, or all that stuff. Now you can do them mid-combat during your opponent's end step. It's a big deal. Another one that I anticipate a lot of brawl decks picking up as their general, and being a 3/3 flash flyer, also harkening back to Widwin, the Biting Gale, which is another flash flyer that saw a lot of commander style play. So I think that there's room for a Wrath Capuchin deck in those formats. In limited, spectacular also. You definitely want to have flying monsters, as many as you possibly can. Those being 3 power, 3 toughness flyers. This one having flash is even just more insane.
Right.
Not sure it's going to get there in constructed. I mean, typically these
Probably
don't.
not.
Wrath Capuchin sounds like the name of the bad boy in a high school movie. Where it's like, are you going steady with Wrath Capuchin?
Yep.
And it's like, no.
Yeah, he's not the bad guy. He's like the villain's even more jerk friend. That after the jerk beats you up, he shoves you and says, "Yes, stay down," and then leaves. Like that's what he feels like.
Wow,
to
that's
me.
so specific. I don't know.
Very specific.
Wrath Capuchin to me is a very powerful tempo card. It is a evasive, powerful card that allows you to essentially mess with your opponent at instant speed until he dies. And they're going to want to kill him pretty quickly, I can imagine, because you're just like, oh, by the way, Saga. Oh, by the way, artifact creature that messes you up. Oh, by the way, this other legend. Like, those things get scary really quickly. Again, at the end of your turn, I play a 3/3 flash flyer that makes all my stuff better. Like, that is value.
Yep.
And that is a card that I wouldn't change my whole draft to get back around, but if I'm anywhere close to white and blue, Wrath is awesome.
Yeah.
Rona. Disciple of Gix, who is really awesome. She's a black, a blue, and a generic mana for a 2/2 uncommon legendary human artificer. When she enters the battlefield, you may exile target historic card from your graveyard. You may cast non-land cards, exile with Rona, and 4 generic mana tap : exile the top card of your library.
I love her, and I specifically love the art. You have like this sort of powerful black woman, and I love the human artificer. I love the shout out to Gix, you know, the character from lore in the past. You know, I like this card a lot. I think it's a neat take on sort of Dimir, almost kind of like a dark take on. You know, we're so used to Joyra and sort of her being almost like the good artificer, and so you know now you have this character that's sort of kind of doing dark things. And I love the artwork. I love the way that she plays with exiling the top card of your library, being able to play with your exile zone, I think is a really neat design space. I really like this card a lot.
This card, Gix is not a good character.
No.
Right.
Gix is not a good guy.
No.
Gix is a bad guy. So
Being a disciple thereof, probably not ideal.
Yeah, she ain't exactly the hero
And I
of the
think she had
story.
a cyborg eye, is that what I'm
Yep,
seeing?
looks like.
Probably a Phyrexian infused.
This is like
I love it.
a dark reflection of the artificer.
Yeah.
You know, this is not that belongs in a museum. This is I'm robbing graves for my own personal benefit, and that really plays out in the flavor of what she does.
I just love the hues. I love the blue everywhere. I love sort of just the darkness. Love it.
It looks like the card art almost fades into that legendary frame at the top.
Wow. This is beautiful.
I mean, and at the end of the day, in terms of you want to play this in sealed, maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
I like it. It's okay.
I think card's great. I think it's real good.
I don't know about all that. I mean, I think it's fine. I mean, you want to. A, your historic card has to go to the graveyard before she's able to do anything with it. B, it is rare that you're going to use that exile the top card of your library because you just don't know what in the world it may or may not be.
No, later in the game. I mean, if you may, I may not play her on turn 3, but if the game's going long, you may cast non-land cards. Oh, never mind. Never mind. I read that wrong. I thought it was in your graveyard.
But it is non-land cards. It's not just historic cards. Right. Any non-land card you exile with her, you get to cast, which is cool, and you're almost guaranteed to exile something with her comes into the battlefield trigger. So you're at least getting that card draw. Later in the game, you can rifle through you can rummage through some notes and try to get some additional things underneath Rona, which are pretty great. So. No, I don't think it's miserable.
Well, my first incorrect interpretation was that you may cast non-land cards and they had to be historic.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Which is not true. Which is actually pretty sweet. So late in the game, you're kind of drawing 2 cards essentially.
Yeah.
You're like,
essentially.
End of your turn, I'll exile over here, and then I'll draw for my turn. And I like the card I exiled.
This is the blue-black interpretation of like Vance's blasting cannons or effects that exile the top card of your lot. Like a +1 on a Chandra kind of thing. Sure. This is the blue-black interpretation of it. You have a lot more control over it. And so I think that I think Rona's quite good. I'm very pleased to have multiple copies of her in either type of limited format.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'll certainly admit I was wrong on that one. This card is actually really sweet. Shanna. Sisay's, or Shauna, if you will.
Magali. Oh
Sisay's
my God.
Legacy. Magali Villanov kills it once again.
I love the visual interpretation of the can't be targeted targeted spells or opponent. Sorry, I love the visual representation of the fact that Shauna can't be the target of abilities your opponents control. Yeah. You see sort of the glimmering, glowing light on her, which is a really neat way to interpret that and show you on a tangential.
The daughter, granddaughter of Sisay?
Something like that, but I love just sort of the physical representation of what that means.
So she's a green and a white. Shauna Sisay's Legacy is a green and a white for a 0/0 uncommon legendary human warrior. She can't be the target of abilities your opponents control. Note, she can still be the target of spells and whatever. She gets +1/+1 for each creature you control.
Including herself.
Well, she has to include herself, otherwise she just dies. And it's fine.
Very Celestia.
Well, yeah, and it's also kind of funny because the Merfolk Trickster card
is specifically why this creature has that ability. I'm almost positive. Is like what design experience led to can't be the target of abilities your opponent. Well, I think it's probably specifically the Merfolk Trickster.
Maybe that. I mean, it's part of that. I can imagine maybe for tapping her down, for example, is a thing. Sure. You can't keep a good Sisay Legacy down. I'm
pretty sure that Sisay, by the way, is a similar to Capuchin, is a family name. And so Captain Sisay, the card from Invasion, we don't know her name.
I thought her name was Sisay.
I think that Sisse is the
Maybe
job
a
title.
surname.
I'm not sure. Either way, the point is that in a green wide, go wide strategy with knights and saprolings, she
Yeah.
can absolutely be an all-star there.
Absolutely.
So, by herself, 2-mana, 1/1, who cares? But no. This is about going into a certain strategy, rewarding you for that strategy, and really playing into the strengths of green and white. So, in Limited, she's not as good in Sealed than in Draft, because in Draft you can really craft a deck around her. In Sealed, she's still fine, particularly if you have any of those sapling makers or night makers. But, this to me, she shines the brightest in a Draft environment. Slimefoot, the Stowaway.
There he
a
is.
Killer card. A green, black, and a generic mana for a 2/3 uncommon legendary fungus. I'm so glad this is uncommon.
Yeah.
Whenever a saproling you control dies, Slimefoot the Stowaway deals 1 damage to each opponent, and you gain 1 life. 4 generic mana, create a 1/1 green saproling creature token. This card is clearly the key standout card in the green-black saproling deck that wants creatures to die and be sacrificed, because whenever they do, Slimefoot gives you an advantage in that, which is great. It creates its own army.
Yep.
The art is just freaking-tastic.
I don't think anybody expected this card to break out the way that it did. I know there was a meme that Mike Linneman had shared. I think it was from Family Guy, where it shows like a meeting happening in like an auditorium, and they're like, so we're going back to Dominaria, and the crowd's just sitting there, and then they're like, and there's going to be legends, and then like in the next slide it's like Slimefoot, and then the crowd gets up and cheers, and this card just everybody fell in love with it. Social media has been buzzing with people wanting to cosplay it, wanting to build commander decks around it, wanting to build Brawl around it, making it standard legal and what they can do with it. I would have never guessed if you had told me, pick one card from this set that's going to just become the most beloved card. I would have never guessed it would have been this card.
Slimefoot is just, it's just adorable.
They're the Swabby.
It's a weirdly adorable fungus.
It is a weirdly adorable fungus, is exactly right. There's a race of creatures in D&D called the Myconids. And the way they communicate is through telepathic spores that they send out, and then, it can't talk, it can't listen, but it can send spores out, and if you're in the cloud of spores and it's friendly to you, you can communicate telepathically. Does Slimefoot have a face or a mouth? How does it communicate?
There's your hat, right?
It has a hat. Yeah.
I think it might be that mass right there.
That's a beardish type looking thing.
Does it smash its portabellas together in order
I don't think it smashes portabellas. Dude.
No?
I don't think so. I don't think it says much.
It doesn't go, how's it going?
I do think this card is extremely playable, though, and one thing that's come up a lot throughout this show is sort of the ability to have reach. And so, a lot of times when you're playing a bunch of 1/1s, when you're playing a bunch of 1/1s, if you don't have the Lord, that's not by itself very impressive, but being able to sort of drain things to kind of get around the fact that your opponent might have bigger creatures is a really unique angle of attack for a deck like this.
And I mean, let's face it, that art is like my baby.
And the flavor
Look
text,
at my babies.
The flavor text is great too. It explains how Slimefoot came about, and it tells you
there.
all you need to know. The damage being dealing instead of loss of life is relevant for Commander when you can grant things infect. And so Slimefoot can be a very fast clock if you have Glistening Oil or a Grafted Exoskeleton to be able to put on your Slimefoot.
Well, as Jorah restored the Weatherlight, a mushroom growing in its hold unexpectedly became her first crew member.
Love it.
I wish that I had a roommate that was like, I accidentally left it in the fridge and now I got a best friend. That's what happened for Jorah. Jorah's like, ooh, hey, I got some. Boy, we should have cleaned this. Is that meat or cake? I can't really tell. That's a farmer. Okay.
I was like, I left some nacho cheese down here a couple weeks ago and forgot about it.
And now it's in charge of swabbing the decks.
All right, our next card has a very special guest. Let's see who it is.
Hey Magic Mikes, this is Jeremy Noell from StarCityGames.com's Commander Versus series, as well as twitch.tv/Jeremy Noell. So, if you've watched my stream or if you've watched Commander Versus, you probably already know the card that I am looking forward to talking to, and that's Tatyova Benthic Druid. It is an uncommon legendary Merfolk Druid. It's a 3/3, and it costs 3 blue-green. It says, whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life, and you draw a card. And I already love Simic a lot in Commander, and this is just a really great melding of the things that I want to do, which is play extra lands and draw extra cards. The life gain is just a sweet bonus to get me to the late game. So if you already have a Commander deck that's Simic, and you've built it over the last year or so, there are probably 2 very big creatures that are heading those decks, and that's probably either Tishana or Kumena. And this slots really well into both of those because it's already a merfolk, so it automatically will benefit Kumena a ton. And for Tishana, it allows you to draw those extra cards and gain that extra life in order to play those extra lands and build up to Tishana, which is a little bit more expensive. So there are also a bunch of other commanders that this could go right into, cards like Kaidel or Thrasios or Momir Vig or Krufix, and this just goes right into those decks and works very, very well with those strategies. And if you have seen my stream at all, you'll know that I generally play a budget version of Commander called 3DH, and Aaron has been on our stream before and knows all about it. And it's a budget version where your deck has to be 3 tickets or less, including the Commander, but not including your basic lands, because those are basically already free. So I think that Tatyova will work very, very well in a format like this because it's uncommon. And it will allow you to get a bunch of really, really cool cards that you may not normally play. There's cards that I would put in this deck, like Coiling Oracle, Urban Evolution, Horizon Chimera, and Bounty of the Luxa are definitely some of the ones that I would want to put in here so that we can get those lands into the battlefield and get bonuses for drawing extra cards and playing those extra lands. So if you're not into the budget thing, there's definitely ways to go much, much bigger with this. You can play cards like Avenger of Zendikar and Vorinclex and Oracle of Moldiah, and Exploration is also a really great card if you've got the funds for something like that. It has been reprinted recently, so it's a lot cheaper than it was, but it allows you to play those extra cards per turn. And if you want something that's a little bit different, you can get something like the more recent Wayward Sortooth, which actually will let you play that extra land per turn, or it could also be a 5/5 if you've got the City's Blessing. And beyond that, you could play cards like Courser of Krufix, which has gone up a little bit, but is still pretty budget. And another one of my favorites is Sword of the Animist, which is a pretty big staple in 3DH nowadays, where you swing in, you get that extra land, and that'll obviously benefit Tatyova. There's also, obviously, if you're in green, you've got to love the ramp. You got cards like Explosive Vegetation and Rampant Growth and Cultivate and Kadamas Reach, obviously. There's also cards like Splendid Reclamation, which if you're milling yourself in the blue, or if you're trying to, dig for stuff, you can definitely just take all those lands, put them in one fell swoop. And cards like Boundless Realms, which is actually one of my favorite cards in Commander currently, because it allows you to just go get all of those lands from your deck if you've got a bunch of basics, and just put them onto the battlefield all at once. You can put like 7 or 10 or 15 different basics all onto the battlefield at once, get all those triggers, draw a bunch of extra cards. Hopefully you've already got a Reliquary Tower or something like that on the battlefield so you can keep all those extra cards. And then you'll be way ahead. And the life gain is definitely a big benefit. It'll get you much higher so that hopefully you can stay a little bit later in the game and play other really cool big dumb stuff, which is what I love to do. So thank you so much for inviting me on this. I really hope that you have fun with Dominaria. It looks like a great set, and I hope you have fun with the rest of your set review. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Jeremy, for participating in the show. That was super cool. Yeah. A lot of really fascinating interactions. Tatyova Benthic Druid is a blue-green 3 generic mana 3/3, a uncommon legendary merfolk druid that whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life and draw a card. Now note, that is not a May ability.
Right.
When you bring all the lands back from your graveyard to play, you're drawing a card for every single one no matter what.
Yeah. And it's also whenever it enters the battlefield, not when you play one. So stuff like Splendid Reclamation and Cultivate and stuff like that really lets this thing go crazy.
Sure. I mean, this card has a lot of potential. This is, if you are playing a blue-green deck, if you're playing a blue-green deck in Seal, this card's amazing. If you open this up early in draft, it can certainly steer your draft in a certain direction because free value is free. Mm-hmm. And I like free value.
Yep.
And that's good to me. So not an amazing card, I think, in Limited, and I think it's really meant to be an all-star in Commander and Brawl type formats.
I am very happy to play this in my limited decks, I think, because you just end up with so many lands.
I mean, if I'm in these colors, you're good.
Gain 1 life, draw a card. That's the rate that you get. I'm not saying this is Sphinx's Revelation, but this is the rate that you get at Sphinx's Revelation. So if you manage to, there's a 3 colorless and a green 3/3 merfolk that whenever it attacks, you mill yourself for 3, and then when it dies, you can put all your lands from your graveyard onto the battlefield.
Sure.
That can end up being a standard legal version of a blue-green turbo land Sphinx's Revelation if it ends up dying. There are lots of interesting applications with Tatyova. I think it's a really great card.
Yeah, I mean, I think casual is where it shines the brightest.
Oh, for sure.
And I'm okay with that. And that's where a lot of these multicolored cards, I think, really lie in. Teferi, hero of Dominaria, a blue, white, and 3 generic mana, 4 loyalty, mythic, legendary planeswalker. It has 3 abilities of +1, draw a card at the beginning of your next end step, untap 2 lands. -3, put target non-land permanent into its owner's library, 3rd from the top.
Yep.
-8, you get an emblem with, quote, whenever you draw a card, exile target permanent an opponent controls.
That's not a May.
That
is anime. Oh, man. Just deal with it.
That ultimate is ludicrous. The ability to come into play, draw a card, and then untap 2 lands, I referenced when we were talking about Jaya adding the 3 mana immediately. Cards that are sort of, you get to this level, but then you are also able to use your mana for other things, I think are very impressive. For Teferi in particular, because he's blue-white, you're going to end up playing him in a control deck. You're going to play him with things like Essence Scatter, Negate, Seal Away, instant speed effects that you can use to protect Teferi, which is how he ends up protecting himself. The putting a non-land permanent 3rd from the top, long-term plan style, that thing is going to bury something for a long time. Being a time mage, definitely helpful there. And again, that ultimate, man, I don't know how anyone ever beats that ultimate ever.
One thing I've been kind of utilizing since I started playing Approach in Standard is how much fun it is to tuck a card in a library and then do Field of Ruin to then make them shuffle it and just kind of go wherever. Because people tend to get very confident. They're like, that's cool, I'll see it in 3 turns. And it's like, well, no, you won't.
You thought you were.
Or even just, the one-sided commit to memory. If you're really desperate, you can just really make them shuffle. Right. But, the sort of hiding and shuffling is a really neat way to deal with things.
Yeah, put a creature on top of your, grip tide a creature and then path to exile another creature. You want that land, bro?
You seriously want that land?
Definitely something with Teferi to consider for sure.
Yeah, this card, again, like all Planeswalkers, absolutely ridiculous and limited.
Of course.
Amazing. Easy for pick one, pack one. You want to play this. Untapping those lands gives it constructed viability. -3 means it solves any non-land permanent. That's a Planeswalker. That's a Saga enchantment. That's whatever you want it to be. This card is very powerful. I think they did Teferi justice.
Absolutely. I think, being able to get the card advantage, it's able to protect itself, sort of protect itself in the +1, and then definitely protect itself in the -3.
Oh, yeah.
Just a great card.
Yeah, card is fan-freaking-tastic. Tiana, Ship's Caretaker, is a white, red, and 3 generic mana for a uncommon legendary angel artificer. She's a 3/3 with flying and first strike. Whenever an aura or equipment you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may return that card to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. So if my aura dies, I'm getting it. And if you kill my creature while I try to play the aura, I'm still
getting it.
No, actually, it doesn't reach to the battlefield at that point.
This is another character that people have really fallen in love with. And this is a very unique take on angels. I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we've ever really seen angels in doing menial tasks.
Right.
Every time we see them, they're sort of these
manual
majestic,
labor. Yeah.
Right, they're protecting, they're fighting. This is somebody who's like, I have a day job and I'm cool with this.
I'm not sure we've seen an angel inside.
Right, yeah. This is somebody
Anywhere.
who, the fact that she's an angel is almost a secondary characteristic of her. And people have really responded to that. And so this is a really neat take on sort of, again, Boros angels. I personally, I don't necessarily see what the fanfare is about, but I appreciate that that's what people enjoy about this card, is that she's almost an angel second.
Well, she's got a wrench.
Yeah.
It's not every angel that can wield a wrench.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. And I think Avacyn Restored and some of the Innistrad stuff with Avacyn, there were some angels inside. But again, this is the Tinkerer angel. And this is the angel that makes sure that, she is the caretaker. If
of
you
the
lose your
Weatherlight,
stuff,
the most impressive artifact anything that has ever been made. This is a godlike car, basically, and you need an angel to take care of something like that.
Yeah, we talked about throughout the show about, the possibility of a Boros aura deck, with things like Varduk, and this could be part of that. This could be an archetype that you could either draft or build in sealed.
Yeah, this card is really cool. It's part of the GP Columbus playmats. Did you see those?
No.
Yeah.
Here's the
Slimefoot,
playmats: Slimefoot,
Tiana.
Weatherlight, and Tiana.
Wow.
Like it, I am legitimately
It's Weatherlight
super
centric.
gel.
I love it.
I'm super jelly. I wish I could make it.
I wonder what Tiana thought when she was like, "Oh man, I get to see the Weatherlight engines. What is this mushroom doing here?"
Hey, dog, and he's just like,
Someone bring down a mop and a bucket. Also,
Well,
I got
Slimefoot would have them up in the bucket. They're the swabby.
Are they?
Yes,
I thought they
their
were
role
just
on the ship,
I
yeah.
thought they were just
They
a
clean.
stowaway.
No, that's their role on the ship.
they clean the
okay.
They are
ship.
the ship's swabby.
That's good.
Right.
Let's put the fungus in charge of cleaning.
Hey, man.
I'm not sure that that's how fungus works.
Fantasy.
Right. I mean, I get that that's how we invented penicillin, but let's get a little bit of let's get the
Happy
let's get
accidents.
OSHA in here real quick. Speaking of which, it's got to be tough to be an angel with a 15-foot wingspan working in an engine room. Like that's a problem. You're just bumping into boilers all the time. Who accidentally turned the knob? Oh, turns out it was just one of my giant 10-foot long feathers. Yeah, a little bit of a problem.
Right, and much like the other two colored legends, again, in these colors, it's great.
Yep.
This one in particular is, I don't think, necessarily worth kind of reaching for, per se. Like, she's good. She's not terrible.
Your auras and equipment aren't going to the graveyard all that often, so
Right.
like that value is not going to be great. But flying first strike for 5, 3/3, that you're happy
good.
with the rate that you're getting.
Right.
If you happen to rebuy a dub, you're also okay with that.
Dub.
Yeah, dub.
Wubba lubba. All right. Cabal Stronghold. We have reached the lands, ladies and gentlemen. This is essentially Urborg, I think, Tomb of
So this was Cabal Coffers,
Cabal Coffers,
which
okay.
was in Torment.
Which you could pair with Urborg and have a really good time.
Right, but you can't do that with this card.
Well, no, don't not think of the ability of Urborg. Like Urborg, the land, how it looked, and it had those two little spires.
Sure.
Those are the two.
That's what
little-
this is.
Right,
I see now.
So this is the Stronghold from Stronghold.
Yeah.
In the Cabal, now the Cabal has the Stronghold.
Got
Yes,
it.
now it's Bells and Locks Power Center. Regardless, Cabal Stronghold is a rare land that taps for a colorless mana. 3 generic mana tap : add 1 black for each basic swamp you control. Now, it's not a basic swamp. You have to only play basic swamps. It kind of calls back to Cabal Coffers, which was a very, very powerful card. And it takes a lot of lands to do a lot.
Yeah.
So it takes 4 swamps just to kind of...
To break even.
Just to break even, really, because you're tapping itself to get that mana. So you got to have 5 swamps plus this, or an Urborg, Urborg the card itself, to turn everything into swamps.
Well, it has to turn them into basic swamps.
Which
So
I think
your
it does?
nope, it just turns them into swamps. Pretty sure it does not work. Like you can turn your islands into basic swamps because they gain the swamp type, but they don't gain basic as the super type.
Well, as in...
Urborg and Cabal Coffers only cared about swamps.
not
This cares about
basic.
basic swamps specifically. So this doesn't work with your dual lands, unfortunately.
It's weirdly powered down.
It is.
It-
Cabal Coffers was way too good.
yes. Cabal Coffers led the mono black deck.
Best
that was in
$20
Standard.
I've ever spent in Commander.
I mean, that card in itself is just not remotely fair. So it's great that we kind of have the fair version.
Yeah, a little bit of a callback, which I like a lot, and,
Right.
and it's a fairer printed version. And it's still you can still take advantage of this effect. There are plenty of decks out there that want to get 7, 8, 9 lands in play. If there's a mono black control MBC, everybody wants it in standard until they get it. If there is that kind of effect, then or that kind of deck, then this will be centric.
Yeah, and ultimately this is being a flavorful, interesting card. Where the Cabal is these days, where's Bells and Locks power located? That's really neat.
Yeah.
As their dark influence spreads from Urborg. This is what happened to Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth on
Nice
a
story
long
card,
term,
yeah.
which is cool. All right, so we get back to the clifftop retreats. This is our sort of the buddy lands.
Yep.
The enemy
These
buddy
are the
lands.
enemy buddy lands.
So clifftop retreat being red-white, Hinterland Harbor.
I love the flavor text on Hinterland Harbor,
Oh my
by the
God.
way. It tells the story. Our ancestors brought down a Phyrexian portal ship, then built our town on its hull. We're pretty proud of that. I love that flavor text. It matches the art beautifully as well.
I mean, it is the art for Phyrexian
It is.
Portal.
Yeah.
Like if you look at Phyrexian Portal, like it is
has
that big
that arch.
arch,
Yep.
right? And there's like little face there and
Yeah,
stuff.
the art direction for these lands was delightful. Even though they're reprints that we first saw in Innistrad, the Clifftop Retreat with the face motif and the interesting, basically carved into the mountainside, like that giant relief that is of Crazy Horse in North Dakota, I think is what it is. And there's also one of Genghis Khan in Mongolia. There are just these massive statues that are carved into mountainsides. And I really appreciate the art direction for these.
Oh, man. So let's see here. To try to get to all of the enemy buddy lands at once, you want to talk about Sulphur Falls?
Sure. Sulphur Falls. Well, we've inherited the mysteries of the Thran, but few of the answers. Is my favorite of the flavor texts.
Right.
And I definitely like what they did here. Isolated Chapel obviously has a gorgeous sort of like the angel staircases, the sun rays, and then there's Woodland Cemetery. That one's for you.
Well, they never found the body of young Josu.
Or that of his murderous sister.
Yeah.
Interesting that they didn't happen to find those.
Yeah.
Weird. I wonder what happened to that.
That's really strange. Well, we also have a cycle of 5 lands called Memorials. So Memorial to Folly is the black land, which it's an uncommon that enters the battlefield tapped. You may tap to add a black mana, or 2 generic mana, black, tap, sacrifice it, return target creature card from your graveyard to hand.
These are no joke, by the way. This entire cycle is great.
Very good.
Folly I do, more like folly I don't.
You don't like this one?
See what I did there? No?
Stapling a Raised Dead to a thing that you're playing already is really nice. So usually you can pretty reliably play this on turn 1 and not have to worry about missing your first creature drop because you aren't playing a ton of 1-drops typically in limited. Memorial of Folly is particularly good in limited, being able to rebuy your best creature.
It's been a while since Wizards has made you play something that entered the battlefield tapped.
Sure.
Wizards has really, I think, pulled back away from that because it's such a huge drawback.
It is.
And now they're like, okay, fine, we'll make this cycle. It's very powerful. That's cool. Let's move on to Memorial to Genius, which of course focuses on Talaria, which is the blue one. A uncommon enters the battlefield tapped. You tap to add a blue. 4 generic mana and blue, tap, sacrifice it, draw 2 cards.
Pretty great.
My lands draw cards.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So once you play your 6th land drop on turn 6, you can pass the turn with mana up. If they don't do anything relevant that you want to seal away your counterspell, you're able to divination at instant speed. It's pretty darn good.
That's terrific. Now, just to note, all of these are very much playable in limited.
Yeah.
More sealed than draft because it enters the battlefield tapped. And
Not
your
really in
curve.
standard.
Not really in
I think
standard.
you're probably
but
playing a couple of these in the various control decks.
I would never say never on this stuff, particularly the draw cards one. When your land draws you cards, that's something to be
Well, there's one,
aware of.
the one that I'm most excited for is coming up later, but I think that the blue one is quite good.
Memorial to Glory is the white one. Enters the battlefield tapped, taps for a white mana, 3 generic and 1 white mana, tap, sacrifice it, create 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens.
Sure.
And that's great.
Go wide. Why not?
Yeah. And it's nice that there's no on the battlefield there. It just says create them.
Yeah.
Done.
Yep.
The end. It doesn't make knights. It makes soldiers.
Fine. Soldiers get things done.
Yeah, they do. As we all know. Memorial to Unity is the green one. Enters the battlefield taps to add a green, 2 generic mana and green, tap, sacrifice it, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order.
More scale elk there for Marshall Sutcliffe's
I like the scale
Elmer
elk.
deck.
I dig that.
Like it.
This card is great, though, by the way.
It's really good.
This card is super good if you're looking for your awesome mythic bomb, if you're looking for a way to find something, like you need a threat now.
The opportunity cost on all these is pretty low. I mean,
Right.
I'm happy to have these if I'm already in the color. None of them are going to push me into a specific color.
Right. You should never go like, Memorial to Unity, I'm totally green. Like, no, don't do that. You're like, oh, I'm green, and that's pretty cool, and I got it mid to late, because that's when you essentially should be picking these things. And Memorial to War, which has the awesome,
That's
Corona.
the false god.
Yes. Memorial to War is, again, uncommon land. Enters the battlefield tap. It taps to add a red, 4 generic mana, and a red, tap, sack, destroy target land.
This is the one that's exciting to me.
Really?
Yeah, because Field of Ruin lets your opponent get something out of it, and I like having Field of Ruin, and it's nice. But it doesn't tap for a red mana. It taps for a colorless.
It also doesn't cost 5. That's a lot of mana.
6 actually,
six.
because you have to tap itself.
Yeah,
it is
the
a lot of
tap
mana,
itself.
but it is an instant speed way to get rid of flipped lands. It's an instant speed way to get rid of anything that your opponent happens to be doing. I just think that Memorial of War is the one that's most likely to see play.
Wow.
In a constructed format, is my guess.
I bet.
No.
Okay. Well, you're over here saying it's the most likely. I'm saying the blue one is the most likely. The blue one to me is a 2 of in whatever random Aintrazi
I don't think
control
either
deck.
one is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think any of these are really going to see any competitive play. But this land, on the other hand, is.
Zhalfirin Void is a uncommon land that when it enters the battlefield, scry 1, and it taps to add a colorless mana. So New Benalia in Future Sight entered the battlefield tap for a white, and it also scried 1. Whereas this is just good old-fashioned untap, scry 1.
Yep. Being untapped is huge.
Yes.
Colorless mana, not that big of a requirement. No. This is also just tears. This is just immediate tears. If you go back and look at the card Teferi's response when he blinks out Zhalfir, and this is him revisiting and seeing that the clouds
And so the city just didn't come back?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
He literally, he
During the
phased
war,
out.
he was like, save my hometown, and then it just didn't. He couldn't find it anymore.
It never came back.
Wow.
And so, like, the clouds are the shape of the town.
Right.
The wind whispers, "Come home," but I cannot.
Yeah.
Says Teferi, which is very sad. However, this is incredibly playable and limited. Definitely play it. Unless you're stretching for 3 colors, this card is A-OK. Fantastic.
Pretty decent constructed too, in my opinion. I mean,
I think so.
I think that you're playing a lot of these. We learned that the Scrylands, the temples from Theros, were extremely potent.
Well, they're also dual lands.
They're also dual lands, but we knew that the Scry was like a third of a card.
It was very good.
Right? So this is like a land drop plus a third of a card, which I appreciate.
We'll see. Lastly, is the last card of our complete set review is the Buy a Box promo. The only way you can get it is Fire Song and Sunspeaker.
Yep.
It is a white, a red, and 4 generic mana for a 4/6 legendary Minotaur Cleric. Red instant and sorcery spells you control have lifelink, and whenever a white instant or sorcery spell causes you to gain life, Fire Song and Sunspeaker deals 3 damage to target creature or player. This is, well, first of all, it's very controversial in that they haven't had a card that you can only get by doing a thing that isn't in a booster pack in like 20-something years. Which is, also the joke was, well, they also brought us back to the time where you couldn't get all the cards in the booster pack, as you harken back to Dominaria. But ultimately, I have seen a lot of Commander players very excited about this. I've seen the rate on like the sales of this card to be anywhere from like $13 to $20.
Nice. That's a good bonus for picking up your box at a local game store.
Right, and you get to pick up a booster box at the pre-release. You can buy a booster box with Fire Song and Sunspeaker at your pre-release.
Very nice.
That's amazing, and a lot of people suspected they've done that because of resellers and people who remove lots and lots of product. Well, we want to reward the store owners who are spending time, event space, hiring judges, advertising events to let them get those types of sales. The card itself, though, I know lots of Commander players have been very excited about this card, and I can see why. It's a really different, interesting way to tackle red-white.
Yeah.
It isn't just guys turning sideways.
Yeah, most of the red-white legendary creatures that you can have as your general kind of do a lot of the same thing. I mean, Jor Kadeen is a little bit different,
You
but
have
even
Calamity,
still,
you have Erois.
Yeah, they're all attack red zone based, and I really like the
attack.
way that this handles that. First of all, the flavor of it being 2 Heirloom Minotaurs stapled together. They're both 2/3s. If you play during Theros, you know that typically that's how big Minotaurs are. Also, if you play during Alpha, you know that's how big Heirloom Minotaurs are, which I really appreciate. This is the only reference to Heirloom in the entire set, as far as I'm aware.
I think so.
Definitely a cool story told on this card with the different. It's sort of like Tibor and Lumia from Guild Pact, where Tibor had one ability and Lumia had one ability. Very similar here, where your red spells do something and your white spells do something. The math on this with Lightning Helix was confusing people for a little bit. Turns out it deals 9 and you gain 6.
Okay.
Is how that works, because it's a trigger for that second ability, whereas the first one is clean and it's lifelink.
Right, and it has lifelink on itself, so that's a thing, which is fine.
So
cool.
That's an interesting one. But
so pick yours up if you can while they're available before they get stupid expensive. No idea when they're going to be reprinted. Wizards has never said they're not going to reprint it.
Right.
It's just this is an exclusive for the time. We'll see if it works. And I think they got enough backlash that we may not be seeing this in the future.
yeah, it's another card that is only going to be available in foil, which has not worked out well for recently Kess, Dissident Mage, and so I anticipate non-foil printings of all the cards that can only be picked up in foil.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of our Dominaria Complete Set Review. Guys, we made it.
Oh, man.
I tried to warn them. I was like, I'm telling you. We've been here for a little over 12 hours filming.
We also had a late start, too.
And we got a little bit of a late start, however, but again, I mean, just filming. We've been filming for, start and stop, but taking breaks, 12 hours. But We absolutely could not have done it without you. We are currently getting tokens made that we're going to, artwork for the tokens that we're going to be able to send to you guys who backed us on the Kickstarter, as well as the other rewards that we have. I can't thank everybody enough for making this happen. I didn't expect to really make this happen. It's a crazy idea.
I know. With this, I'd been a fan of the set reviews previously, and I know that people had asked us to do stuff like this before, and it was really like, I don't know if I want to, do that. I don't want to try to fill those shoes. That's kind of awkward. And do people really want that? I don't think people are really gonna. Turns out people really wanted that, and so to be able to have the opportunity to do it, I had a ton of fun. If we got 100 more cards in the set, I'm happy to, keep it rolling.
We'll keep doing this.
I definitely have a new appreciation for what you go through. For those who don't know, I like to give you sort of behind the scenes tea. We are currently staring at 3 huge, photographer's square lights that have been beaming down on us all day. Evan's been dabbing himself with his little sweat cards, and my deodorant gave out on me 2 hours ago.
I don't know what your guys' problem is. I am very well ventilated with the shorts that I've been wearing the whole
He's not wearing pants. Our original venue didn't really go the way we wanted it to, so we kind of improvised everything.
Comedy
this
of
morning.
errors, for sure.
We have friends who've been helping us behind the cameras that y'all don't see right now. There's a lot that goes into these, and I mean, we've been going, and I didn't know that this was going to be so professional.
This has been a slog, and my neck hurts, and I'm tired. And
my God,
so let's do it again in 3 months.
All right, that sounds great.
Right?
Awesome. You guys have been fantastic. Thank you very much, Ruben.
Thank you. This has been
Aaron.
delightful.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, thank you guys for watching. We wouldn't be doing this if it weren't for you guys. So from all of us at Magic Mike's, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.